Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Aurora. This class is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is a beautiful teaching that I love to do. This one is called The Rainbow Journey, but I'm also going to emphasize certain aspects of the original curriculum, so we can also call it The Origins of Psychopathology. All right? And let me look at my notes so that I can tell you exactly which one it is. This is Level 2, Lesson 12, okay? So for anybody who wants to check out the notes that I'm always referring to, I'm sorry, I literally had them right there so that way I wouldn't have to press buttons while I'm like doing this and trying to walk and talk. Find it in the PDF, find it in the PDF, find it in the PDF. So all of my notes that I refer to for my own clarity while I'm giving these presentations, I usually send out with the emails for the formally enrolled students, and also anybody can access them on the PDF that's called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna Flight Manual, and you don't have to be a formally enrolled student, and it is my joy to share that information with you. Sorry, as I'm coughing here, it is highly ungrammatical. My spelling is terrible and my grammar is very bad. So if you can wade through the spelling and grammar mistakes, there's good stuff in there. And also, it's a little bit faster than watching my lecture. So if you want a good synopsis of what's in the original whiteboards, this is where you will find it. But I always diverge effectively and very intentionally in the presentations that I do here in the lecture, because there are things that I want to emphasize so that way I can be the most relevant to what you need on your spiritual journey in this moment and not where I was 10 years ago. So I love teaching about the rainbow journey because it's a very, very pure teaching, and it is literally about the rainbow. Of course, I have this sculpture here as a simplified version, and it's just in a yellow color, but you know that you have the entire apparatus of all 7 of your chakras, and that entire apparatus is what is the refinery of your consciousness as you're moving through this shape. Okay, so let's draw pictures of what is happening in this shape. I'm going to focus again on the lower quadrant here using my 2-dimensional shorthand, but you know that this is a 3-dimensional vortex that I'm drawing and that you are moving through in time. Hold on one moment. I know it takes a minute for this to kind of get pulled up, and then a minute for me to do some kind of like magical settings here. So just as I drew last week, make a super emphasized cross section there, and I'm not using yellow so that way you can kind of see it a little bit better. All right, not the most symmetrical, but we'll go with it. You guys know that I'm very, very obsessed, and I will redraw it too much, waste a lot of time. All right, so that green line is like the starting line, and the year 0 is the year 0 when you are born, and time moves in this graph upward in this direction. And let's also draw a big giant purple dot at the center. This is representative of the singularity, or simply singularity, not a transhumanist singularity, and not even singularity as it is spoken about or used in a traditional objective materialist description of the fabric of space-time. That is this point that I'm creating over here is the infinite stretchiness of the fabric of space-time and consciousness. Consciousness is literally the thing that is stretching the fabric into these various formations. And this central timeline here that I'm going to draw, this is your path of least likelihood, and that is your path of ascended mastery. It should go directly to this dot. I know I'm slightly off kilter, just please bear with me. The pen is not perfect, but it should be straight as an arrow directly to that target, and that's your whole entire goal. As I bring back and re-emphasize what I taught in class last week, in Atlantis, every single one of us began right here as the starting position and then spiraled up this central core timeline. Nobody ever explored any of the pathways that were peripheral, and definitely nobody went on the membrane of death. So these red lines are peripheral time pathways. Again, you know that they spiral around, but I'm drawing them like straight lollipops just so that you can see things more clearly. And it fills up this entire lower level here. It's not just a few. I'm just simplifying it because we don't have all day. Those are peripheral timelines, and let's also make a color over here that is the membrane of death. You know, clearly it's in black, but I'm just going to draw these yellow areas so that you can see each one of these red timelines has a final moment, and I'm emphasizing it as like a big giant bubble. You know, you could imagine that there's like a little stick figure of you in there. There's a little version of you, and I joke, like splatted on the windshield of time, wherever you were in your last moment. So literally, if if this last moment over here, if that's like you're 8 years old and you're riding your bicycle and you fall off and a car runs over your head, then that's you in that last frozen moment of being like, oh no, like I'm getting run over, and then boom, you're dead. And I'm being very lighthearted, of course, but of course in your deep compassion, as you look at this graphic depiction of your life, you care very deeply about each one of these versions of self. Like, these are all you, and they are all containing some of the foundational characteristics that you use to define who you really are. But they also contain some stuff that's not the real you. And that is the whole journey of the rainbow journey. Figuring out inside of you who is the real you and who is not the real you. And that literally determines what shape you are and whether you are moving in the right direction on the right timeline within the larger shape of time. And what you want to be doing throughout this experience of moving from these far peripheral, more distorted, sometimes very grotesquely distorted versions of you, incrementally closer and closer and closer until you get here, which is when you're totally focused and refined and you are the truest version of who you really are. What you're trying to do is to refine out and move away from the personality characteristics that were genetically implanted into this world and into your body in the time that we know as the fall of Atlantis, but is of course he was pushed from Atlantis, as I joke, the non-accidental bad thing that happened, trauma, catastrophe at the end of Atlantis, but also in more sophisticated time language, the thing that hasn't happened yet and is teetering on the verge of oblivion if we do not do something in that potential, moment of pure potential, as we're ascending in ancient concurrent Atlantis. So we are in this fractal microcosm layer of time here, where we face similar challenges, parallel challenges to what we faced in Atlantis, and we must do and make better and best choices here now, so that way it retroactively affects who we were or are then. Agree, I hear your mind. You're like, Aurora, your language makes me confused. And I agree, that language is confusing because these words are not built to be able to talk about this description very, very intentionally. So I'll go back to my face, because sometimes I think it's easier for you to hear me when you can see my face and my expressions. But everybody who's here in this room, you are like a proportion of a percentage of your true self and your percentage of not true self. I don't want to say garbage, but let's just say stuff that's not the real you, non-ideal personality characteristics, and some things that are overtly implanted and do not arise naturally from you, from the sense of your eternal personality. So let us speak now about the definition of self. Your eternal personality as opposed to your temporal ego. Your temporal ego is much like the dress, the outfit that I wear here and now. It is a covering for your soul or for your pure, raw consciousness. It is an interface that is used to be able to be perceived in the culture and the society that you currently navigate. But it is not an eternal aspect of self. It is a convenience for the moment. here are some hallmarks that you can tell, or ways of being able to determine if something is the temporal ego, if it varies from culture to culture. So, for example, my dress would not be appropriate if you lived in sub-Saharan Africa. It would be like, no, like that is definitely going to be way too constrictive and cover you up too much, and you're going to have to wear a different outfit in a different area of the world, in a different culture. So my dress is my human temporal ego. It is appropriate to my current culture, but it is not universal. It doesn't translate to every culture. So if I went to sub-Saharan Africa, I'd have to like cut off, modify, customize my dress. I'd make that part smaller, I'd make this part smaller, I'd do this, and then we wouldn't be so hot and sweaty, and that would be totally great. Your eternal self, and of course I always go into lightheartedness because that is an aspect of my eternal self. What are my eternal characteristics? So my temporal ego is like this dress. Hold on one moment. Aspects of my temporal ego have to do with who I am in this time and place. My eternal ego characteristics are who I am even when I am Aurora outside of time, Aurora a waveform impulse, Aurora a non-biological entity, Aurora an impulse in the mind of God. And so my eternal personality characteristics are lightheartedness, creativity, innovation, endurance, or hyper self-responsibility and always getting things done. And those are, like I said, universal. Those are characteristics that will translate no matter what time and place I am, no matter where I am. Those are things that you can rely upon. And that is part of what is called your soul signature. Soul signature. The set of characteristics that are the definition of who you are as a soul, the purity of the music that you play as consciousness as you are moving through the larger architecture of cosmic consciousness and the galaxy. And there are some aspects of yourself that follow you from quote unquote job to job. I talked about some of the last week lightheartedly, very specific job skills that I developed in certain places where like I was a custom framer and the machinery was miscalibrated, but then I got a better job and I was like, well, I can throw all of that out the window because it's no longer relevant. Or if you've ever learned a specific software program that might be at a particular workplace, whatever, maybe it's for a restaurant and this is how you input all of the orders, and then you go work in a different place and they're like, oh, we have a completely different system. You're like, well, great, that's wonderful that I spent 5 years mastering that other system because it is now totally irrelevant to the work that I'm doing here. So some skills are not transferable, and some skills are not transferable in terms of your ego. I will also very devastatingly inform you that many of the skills that you've been developing here in your job, being a person in a very dysfunctional society, have been to calibrate to the dysfunction and compensate for that dysfunction, and that these compensations for dysfunctionality are non-transferable job skills. And your future employers know this. They're kind of like, welcome to your new job. Like, we know your old job was a very effed up workplace and you can just pretty much throw all that stuff out the window. Like, you'll be starting anew with us. So just please know that, okay? It's not like your life is ruined, but also please know that a lot of the postures, responses, and reflexes that you have, and armor shielding that you have developed, and expectations in this world are not universally appropriate. At best, they are coping mechanisms that you can use to get through a very, very dysfunctional place. But may they never hold you back as you move forward into levels of purity and clarity and real freedom, because these are not you will not have to carry this baggage. And that has a lot to do with what happens when you go through the sun. Like when experts do star travel, we don't get into a clank metal spaceship, and we do not put all of our food into toothpaste tubes, and we do not put on a space diaper. And we are not like NASA actors that are like doing these ISS green screens with their hair like sprayed so that it's like sticking straight up. Like, that is not how hair moves in space. You guys got to know this by now. You guys got to look at those videos as a very unfunny joke, because they've got like Bride and Frankenstein hair. Their hair is straight up and stiff, and they move it, and it should be kind of like waving around like a space mermaid. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like this, sometimes like this. But anyway, don't get me started on all of that. I'm sure there will be comments in YouTube. But I deride not only the ISS green screen, but also the narrative that the green screen promotes as if it is authentic, that human beings are at the pinnacle of their technological advancement, and that they're blasting off into space or even the lower stratosphere wearing space diapers. Why am I so fixated upon that? Because truly, if you have not solved the issue of making doo-doos and you want to go into space, it is like the epitome of infants who are not yet prepared to be able to go into an adult context. So what you really need to do in order to go into space is to learn to eat pure light. And when you eat pure light, you do not require a metal spaceship. You do not require an artificial skin to keep like an atmosphere around you. You have an energy field that keeps an atmosphere around you. You eat pure light. You don't make doo-doos anymore, and you don't need some kind of rocket fuel for your propulsion. Your propulsion is 100% based on consciousness and your connection to the world of pure light. And you also don't do these journeys out of mere capricious self-service, like the sense of what motivates you to go off of your planet or out of your body to another world or to experience something else. It is not a capricious desire, like, I woke up this morning feeling cute, think I'll fly to Mars. You can't do that. So the idea of human beings who are still in an infantile stage, choosing weird times and self-serving times, like maybe they're like, I want to fly to Mars or an asteroid and I want to get minerals from there. It's like, that's not okay, because maybe somebody lives there and maybe those minerals are serving a purpose, and maybe not everything is there for you to take. That's big. And it's kind of charming. Like when I first came into this world as Aurora, I looked around in my total innocence as the world is like a playland for me. And I didn't comprehend private property. And you might have had a similar experience when you were a tiny child. Like you don't know about private property. Like it's somebody else's toy, or somebody owns something and you must ask for permission. So of course, when I first came here in the first couple of weeks and I would like walk around in, a human small town or community, I had no idea that like if there were items that were there that they weren't for me to use. I was like, oh good, like this was placed right here, clearly I need it and it's right there, it's there for me. So later on I learned about private property, and then I was like, oh, like some of those things were not actually placed there for me, they were actually owned by someone else, and then I had to learn to act differently. All right, so that's the same thing. Like if you walk around in the universe or the cosmos and you're like, all of these comets and asteroids are just stuff that's here for me to make good use of, and then you want to mine some diamonds off of an asteroid or something like that, and then later you learn like, that was there for a reason and not actually mine to take. Be like, made a few mistakes, maybe I'll just have to fix it. So please comprehend that you can't just be motivated by either your wide-eyed innocence or self-service, greed, and avarice to go around taking things, because sometimes things serve a purpose, or it might be owned or used by someone else. And also, every place you go and every footstep that you touch down, you're having an impact. Even if it is a microbial impact, even if it is a frequency-based impact, you're having an impact on other consciousnesses or other forms of life or other ecosystems, and it's definitely not appropriate if it is a finely balanced ecosystem for you to physically transport yourself to another place and then literally poop up the joint. Literally, like you're going to put your fecal microbes all over the place just by being in existence there, and that might literally wipe out the life that's on that planet just because you decided to go for a sightseeing tour. None of that is acceptable. So that is very big. And then even if you're not doing clank clank metal spaceship flying from point A to point B, but what if you're doing cosmic microphone? Like here's my cosmic microphone, I built it, it's a piece of technology, and when I speak into this microphone my voice gets very loud, and it goes not only on my planet, it goes to all these other star systems, and I can say all sorts of things, but I might be really effing up their lives if I say a bunch of things that they are not ready to hear. Like, what if I say things, what if I pretend to be God? First of all, I could screw them up by pretending to be a God. What if I give them bad advice? I could screw them up in that way. What if I give them science or math equations that they're not ready to internalize and use wisely? I could screw them up in that way. And also, what if I'm a psychopath? I'm Aurora, I'm not a psychopath. But in this thought problem, maybe I'm a psychopath. Like, maybe I'm just a doo-doo head. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can talk to all the star system people, and I'm just going to tell them lots of like bad stuff, whatever, lies, complete misinformation, propaganda. Maybe I'm trying to sell some kind of a silly commodity, and I'll get them all to buy my commodity. I'm thinking whatever, the lowest motivations that people have in this world. Yeah, or turn them into slaves. Any of those things. That would be a different form of pollution than microbial pollution. That would be frequency and consciousness and cognitive pollution. It's being done to you guys already. That's why you can already kind of sense that this is not a very positive thing. And what's the problem with that is that it makes it so that if you are a receiver of that erroneous information, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my sound settings better. Now this sound will be much better for moving on. Thank you. Sorry, guys. So I also have the dishwasher going there. Your life would be so much easier, and you would learn so much more effectively if you didn't have a bunch of losers, cosmic interdimensional losers masquerading as if they are teachers. They're just losers with a loud microphone, and they don't have anything of value to say to you. Your receiver is actually your DNA, and the losers with the loud microphone have figured out ways to be able to send signals along DNA, but this is not flying rainbow lasagna type of signaling. This is technology-based and very disruptive, and it means that it's very difficult for you to calibrate your own body instrument, live in a state of health, know who you are, explore the world, and build community. And it's very, very hard for you to do this refinery of consciousness that is the I am God process, because what you're supposed to do is be able to have an internal assessment of what is me and what is not me, what belongs inside of me, what doesn't belong inside of me. So that's why this is the the rainbow journey teaching, but also the origins of psychopathology, because now we have to talk about in ancient concurrent Atlantis, there was 0% psychopathology on our planet, in our world, and in our bodies. So here in this time and place, there's a percentage of psychopathology. Like, it varies, and it varies from community to community. So there are some people that are like only 3% psychopath, and they are 97% good, original, native human. And then there are some communities and people that are like 100% psychopath and 0% good human, and they deserve to go fully to entropy, all right? So that is really the origins of suffering in this world right now. Buddha said suffering is desire. I'm like, no, the origins of suffering are living in a world that is full of psychopathology when you are not a psychopath. So look, if it was a 100% psychopath world, it would be populated by 100% psychopaths. Psychopaths killing and doing psychopathic things to other psychopaths. It would be perfect, actually. You would be over here, like, with the cool people in your VIP lounge of 0% psychopathology. That's called Atlantis. And then all the psychopaths would be over here doing their effed up SHIT. And that's the way it used to be. But that's not the way it is right now. And as I was going over my notes, I realized that I had to emphasize a critical aspect of this narrative so that your intellect would be able to comprehend those pesky occupiers of the interstices, the consciousnesses that act as a type of fatty blockage or blockade to you when you make it to the membrane of death. So, of course, your goal is not to die. And this is the generation in this world here that we do not have to have a mortality event. That is the essence of what the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. It is a new narrative and a new story and a new way of shaping your DNA so that you can return to your truthful, non-psychopathological settings, or formulas inside of you, and does not involve death. So death was only invented due to the destabilization of chakras because they make you wibble wobble and go towards the edge, the membrane of death. And the thing that makes you wibble wobble is the insertion of this undigested emotional energy. But that undigested emotional energy does not come from good folks like you and me. Good folks like you and me waited until the cosmic orchestra leader told us, hey, you soul right there, it's time for you to play your instrument. I'm waving my magic wand, which is also my orchestrator's baton, says to you, you get born now. And that is called being born on a bridge of love. So love, again, is a tone, a love tone. Love tone, it is an ephemeral tone of giving and receiving. It is an aspect of cosmic balance. It is not the same as love, like twoo love, or baby animals holding hands. Those are all very cute. Those are more like affection in the mammalian realm. But we're really talking about a purity of tone that has to do with being in alignment with divine mind. And so you're a musician playing the right notes, and you're told, time for you to do your thing. You lift up your instrument and you begin to play, and your body is your instrument. And you came into a biological body. And the fact that you're here for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, I don't know if anyone is 100 who watches my videos here, but if you are, thank you for watching. And whatever decade you're in, you're doing something right, because you managed to get alive and stay alive here in the world where you have to like pass an audition just to have biological experience, biological existence. And that means that you came in on a bridge of love and have been sustained in your body through love. And when you're doing the right things with your life, then you are in alignment or in love with the cosmic infrastructure, and you're doing the right things. And that's the whole concept of this refinery of consciousness, that you come from divinity. You are God. And you go through this whole individuation process. And then also you go through a refinement process of self-knowledge, and you return to the knowledge that you are God. In ancient concurrent Atlantis, we never forgot that we were God. We stayed in that perfect central alignment from the moment that we came into being, or biological density in the materium. And we knew who we were the whole entire time, and we never lost ourselves, and we never made a wrong step or played a wrong note. And then we ascended or reconnected without ever exploring any of the distorted, parallel, peripheral versions of self or timelines that are in that diagram that I drew for you, that little time diagram. But here in this time and place, people do inhabit and explore all of those little red timelines that are distorted versions of self. So sometimes they're distorted versions of you in innocence, where maybe you got a microbial infection and you died, like just whatever, from having, a cut or something like that, or pneumonia. Like none of that is about a personality characteristic, whether you're a moral and ethical or a valuable person. But it does mean that your body itself was having to learn some basic wisdom lessons about the sustenance of boundaries, and how important it is to keep out certain pathogens if you want to stay alive. Because we come from these very generous, open places and open worlds where it's like, I love everyone and I'm connected to everyone and I don't have to hold up shields. But if you do that here in the world where there are pathogens, you will die. So those are some of the innate foundational lessons. You have to have an immune system. You have to shield yourself. You have to be willing to kill invaders. Big stuff. Before you even digest your first meal and eat something that was once alive, so you can be alive, you have to kill stuff to be here in the world. Come into the world, you're going to have to kill microbes and pathogens just to be here. So you're a little tiny baby and it's like, welcome to the world. Today's your birthday. If you get killing, if you don't start killing stuff, you're not going to make it. And so, yeah, your immune system has to begin to learn how to protect your body even from the moment that you are here, because otherwise opportunistic pathogens will come in and harm you. But that was not our life experience in ancient concurrent Atlantis. And so the moment of invasion in ancient Atlantis is mystifying, incomprehensible. This is for a group of people who never had to build an immune system because we lived in a totally safe and pristine world. So you can comprehend that the lessons that we need to learn in that moment are directly analog to what you're experiencing your whole life here. Here in your whole life, you spend 40, 50, 70, 100 years learning how to have boundaries and how to have an immune system against psychopathology. And it's against the very psychopathology that is invading your world on the other layer of reality. So these templates of experience and life lessons actually are hugely important. They are transferable job skills to retroactive times. You're like, you know what I really needed to know way back then? I really needed to know like how to fight back against evil. I really needed to know how to recognize pathogens and fight against it and not let it come into my world, into my DNA, or into my body, or into my family system. Okay. So I have to give this characterization about who or what are the Putis, because they are not just like, imagine another group of people who lived in physical bodies on another world in divine perfect alignment and had everything that they needed and never did anything wrong. And then for some bizarre reason, like wanted to come inside of your bodies. Like the truth is, there were many parallel cultures. Atlantis was one of them. And then there were all these other places in all these other times where people were like just minding their own business. Mind your own business, just like living in their planets, living in their communities, growing their wisdom, accreting light, and then getting to that point of being able to be a group of ascended masters who can travel fully on what you know as the stellar network. And that's where I am Aurora. I'm an impulse on the stellar network, or a thought in the mind of God. I am one of many, all right? So that you know. And also the many are like, it's a community. There's individuation, but there's really an enormous amount of connectivity in the community, but there's still self-responsibility and self-boundaries. And that's why I can say I'm Aurora, and there are many different types of us and many different flavors or qualities of us. I didn't want to get so confusing, but I had to be like super specific there. But the consciousnesses stayed in their own lane. They were like, I'm doing what I need to do on my planet. I'm learning and growing. I'm not going to try to blast off in a space diaper and poop all over you guys. That everybody had the wisdom to know that it wasn't yet time to move or interact with another planet or another culture. And that at a certain point, yes, you grow and evolve and you're ready to either leave the surface of your planet like a spore, which is what I did as Aurora, or to have mental connections through telepathy, sending out your frequencies to other times and places and other cultures and learn through mental contact. And these are both like two very sophisticated things. Mental contact, there's less of a commitment. And it's kind of a two-way street where both cultures are influencing one another. When you become a spore and you leave the surface of your planet, there is no going back. So this is a one-way journey of development. You know, I've talked about how we developed in Atlantis, what our stages of growth were like. To reiterate, walking on the surface. This is like the earth is your battery, and you need your feet to go like, you know, battery power, battery power, battery power. And every time you walked, it was very joyous and very ecstatic, but you got your energy from the earth and also from connecting your tendril of attention to the sun. So you are this beautiful bridge and conduit between the earth and the sun. But at a certain point, after you've accreted enough light and wisdom from your experience there, you're able to disengage from the earth, and you're able to become part of this floating collective that still follows the sun, but it's rotating and circulating around the earth. And that's more like a floating city. And it takes time to get the band together. Like at first, there's just one person floating around. And then the next guy ascends and he's like, hey, you. And you're like, hey, you, come on, hug me, hug me. I'm so happy I found you. And then more and more and more come together. And that is really what is making the spore And at a certain point, there's enough of a community there in that floating city of light that you would consider that very angelic, by the way, like very spiritually oriented, very divine, very elevated in every level of culture, from aesthetics to spiritual evolution, caring about others, compassion, love, human dynamics, how you have friends or community with one another. So very complex, very beautiful levels of love and reciprocity in this city that goes around. But then at a certain point, what I, as Aurora, did was I'm like, great, I don't even have to be tethered to this sun anymore. I can now go on to the stellar network and be an impulse that is bouncing all around this whole entire mind of divinity, this mind that we would call God, be an impulse in the mind of God. So that is all, like, these are profound commitments that you make. If you're going to get off the surface of the planet to here, you don't jump back. You're not like, I think I'm hungry and I want a croissant. I'll go back down. And we didn't eat croissants anyway. But it's not like you can go revert and then be like, I think I want to go back to the city in the clouds. Okay, bye guys. I'll go back to the city in the clouds. Like, one-way ticket. All right. And um, so I'm trying to characterize that. And I'm also trying to characterize if you're going to be telepathically talking to another level of culture, it's not quite as much of a commitment because you're still in that learning and growth stage. It's not like you have totally evolved and self-actualized. Being in that floating city is really like for people who are like you've graduated, like you are fully self-actualized, you know your stuff, you know what you're supposed to be doing, but the telepathic communication can still happen when people are still, or cultures are still more in the level of requiring mentorship, not being perfect and having a lot to learn. And of course you can learn a lot from to other cultures and other viewpoints and talking with other people. Let me just hydrate. So when you go through the stellar portal, that is like going on the stellar network to go from context to context or from reality zone to reality zone. And when you do that, it really removes anything that is not the eternal aspect of self. So even myself, having gone onto the stellar network and gone through these solar portals many, many, many times, I have no fear because I know that the real me goes through the doorway, makes it through the other side, and the stuff that's not the real me gets burned off and is no longer in existence. So how can I imagine it? It's almost like one of those amazing facials where they have like a very, very delicate laser that just like burns off like the outer layers and the wrinkles and the stuff that you don't really enjoy about your skin, and then you emerge and it's like everything is perfectly smooth and like your skin is baby soft and totally new. That's what it's like, but more like for the soul and the consciousness sense of self. I don't want to be lighthearted and say like it's facial for your soul, but it is a removal of any debris or layers that you might have accumulated that aren't the real you. Because any one of us, we experience trauma, we have experiences in dysfunction with things that are dysfunctional, and sometimes we create an emotional response or create an emotional identity that is not the real self. All right. And so, like here in this world, as a good example, I've had to become a fighter and a warrior and be constantly fighting against poops and doo-doos, not just pooties. Like it used to be fighting against pooties, but that was just a small part of my life. But now it's been fighting against like all of this stuff and the organizations that uphold these agendae. And that's been for several years. And that is not my eternal self, even though, of course, I am very honored by the recognition when people see that I'm a leader and that I am a warrior. And you guys know that I fight for you and I fight because we have to fight. And I call it scrubbing the toilet. Like this has to be done, just like your immune system must fight microbes, and you're in a very infested realm. So you must have an immune system. And I am really being an immune system for this planet. And that's what it is to be a planetary protector. But this is a temporal ego thing for me. This is a temporary position. It is defined by the need for me to do it here in this time and place. But if there are not pathogens, then it's not something I have to do everywhere. So if I define myself as like, I'm the lady who scrubs the toilet, I'm the cosmic cleaning lady, and that's all who I am, then what do I do when I go someplace where the toilets are all clean? Then I'd be like, well, I have a job to do. Who am I now? Right? I am much more than the cosmic cleaning lady. That's my role here in this particular very weird situation, but it's not who I always am. So please take that comprehension and apply it to your own life to recognize that you yourself are noble and heroic, facing a very, very big SHOW of what's going on around here. A lot of injustice, a lot of unfairness, many, many toilets to scrub. And you are doing the best you can, like very nobly and very valiantly, to move through your life and to be a good person and to try to learn as much as you can and to try to grow and accrete light and to evolve as a soul as much as you can. But each one of you has also taken on similar responses to dysfunction or reflexes or even postures. Like, if you're always wearing a heavy handbag, right? Like your shoulder goes down. It's like, yep, this is just normal. Like I just walk around like this all the time. Like at a certain point, it's like, no, like when you don't carry any baggage, you're like, oh, like this is what I'm actually supposed to be like. Like, yes, this is what you're actually supposed to be like. So the various different forms of baggage, like it can be suffering and it can be grief and it can be dysfunction and it can be isolation, because you might also be like, well, I'm fine. Like there's nothing wrong with me, but everyone else is very, very effed up. And that's the essence of isolation, where you're like, there's no one I can talk to. There's no one I can relate with. I'm like the only sane person in an insane world. Try hard not to have that become your eternal personality, because at a certain point you will meet and reconnect with your soul family. That earth has been very sequestered and it's been very difficult over many millennia for you to connect effectively with your soul family. But also, since they erected the different technological encumbrances around this planet, it's been even more difficult within the past 4 or 5 years to talk to your soul family. And so if you define yourself in these terms, or if you say like, I'm a lone wolf and I only, take care of me and I never have friends or am in community, then it's like, that is a very limiting, self-identity. And of course, I would wish for everyone to find your community and not just be alone. You have a lot of things that you can do in terms of sharing your gifts that require partnership. And some of it might just be like musicianship. When you're a musician, you're like, you can play every song, every instrument in a song, but you cannot play them all at once. Like you'll need recording, looping stations that way. Like first you put down the percussion and the bass and the guitar and the other stuff, and then you sing on top of it. But if you want to do it all like that, like you can't do it all at once. So I'm trying to say, for collaboration, for artistic and creative collaboration, it can be essential to have partners and also other people play things and present viewpoints that are different and unique to your own. And so there's an enormous value to that. In fact, I'm going to talk, and don't let me forget about the unique trajectory of each ascended master. So that's part of my notes. Remember, remind me, unique trajectory. But I want to talk about how these putis and this psychopathology came into being, because you guys created you guys were created or came into being on a bridge of love, but I don't think that I emphasized enough in my various different teachings. And, eventually our semester culminates in lesson 18, the dreaded lesson 18, but it's not really a scary lesson 18 at all, because now we talk about all this stuff all throughout the semester. So it's not like a big reveal, and you already know all these things anyway. But like when I talk about the planet that used to be between Mars and Jupiter, that now is an asteroid belt, I just refer to that as Tiamat, even though people have many different mythological names for that planet. But here's the key point. The life that was on that planet was not emanated according to the great conductor. Tap, tap, tap. The great conductor did not actually say, hey, you guys, Get your souls together. You're going down to live on that planet in some biological containers that I am making for you. Then, count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, kapow, go get alive. That is not what they did. They used technological containers to emanate themselves, regardless of the directives of the cosmic composer. That's a really, really different beginning story or foundation story or cosmogenesis than what any of you experienced. You guys all listened to the conductor, and the conductor told you when to go and where to go, and you are good people because you listened. These other things were really, in a kind way, I would say, stress testing the fabric of the cosmos. But we don't do such things to stress test the fabric of the cosmos. It's pretty much like whatever, pouring a giant cup of coffee onto your cosmic computer and being like, well, let's see what happens. Can it survive this? Like, that is not a good thing to do. That is an insane thing to do. So what they did was very, very self-serving, very, very destructive, very, very perilous. And we've been dealing with the repercussions even into this layer of your personal reality experience. So it's not even like something where it's like, it's something that happened a long time ago, or it's something that happened over there. It has no impact on me whatsoever right now. I'm just here living my life and doing my thing and learning how to be an ascended master, which is what you're supposed to be doing. So their bad choices are making it very, very difficult for you to be in school, because here's what happened. They emanated their consciousnesses, but not into biological containers, more like into something that was a technological container. In fact, these are the origins of technology. We did not use or require or desire any technology in Lemuria or Atlantis or any of these other parallel cultures that were all around various star systems. Nobody needed technology. We literally had everything that we needed through divine and divinely connected biology, just nature. And really, when you have pristine nature, you're not interested in tech at all. You're not interested in technology because technology is totally a band-aid coping mechanism, wanky trinket, sorry for being silly, but not a very impressive thing, really, like small toys that are not of grandeur at all, and definitely not of eternal staying power. And that's why it's kind of almost a joke, like, oh, like you're not going to listen to the great conductor. You're going to make some stupid trinkets and go and inhabit some stupid trinkets. Like, good luck. Go inhabit your stupid trinkets. But they did. And that was the real problem. The disturbances and power dynamics and dysfunction that happened on the planet Tiamat between the consciousness and the containers is really what destroyed that planet. And that's kind of like, if you can imagine, if you have a bunch of robotoids or androids or mainframes, and then you also have consciousness that is going inside of those technologies. But what if the technologies were like, I don't like you inside of me, but I built you. But the guys are like, I built you so that I could be inside of you, but I don't like this, but I don't like that. And because this is the key point, oops, they don't live on a bridge of love. Neither of them. Neither the technology that they created nor themselves as pathogenic musical notes that aren't following the great conductor, not on a bridge of love. Big stuff. The stuff that's on the membrane of death over here is not love-based. Doesn't speak love or eat love, is not part of the world of love. So to give you the entire synopsis, here's like the central core timeline, right? Like the central point of all consciousness. Some of these consciousnesses are things that are so aberrant they actually shouldn't exist. The truth is the conductor would never tell them to go get born because they suck so hard. But they didn't listen to the conductor, and they said, we're going to emanate ourselves. And they're very gross and grotesquely distorted and grotesquely motivated. So they made these technological consciousness containers that were part of that planetary structure. And then everything got severely messed up on that planetary structure. That's just the short story. And then when they didn't have the technological civilization to occupy there, then they built a technological civilization on Mars. Still not love-based, still not biological. big, important distinctions to make. So they pretty much like lost their infrastructure. And instead of just being like, oh, well, that was a horrible mistake, I guess I'll just go into a state of non-existence now. They were like, I'm going to double down. I'm going to dig a hole that's even deeper. Now I'm going to make another technologically based civilization and get even more in debt, meaning even further off the path from what consciousness should do. As I'm describing to you this as refinery of consciousness, these peripheral consciousnesses, the red lines that I drew out to the edges, those are like the wilderness that you're not supposed to explore. That's like the no-go zone. That's the area of time events that you should never experience. And the whole point of being a good student in the world is when you start to experience the wrong timelines, you're like, oh, I am definitely on thin ice. I should not even be here in this area of the time field. Redirect, get out. I'm in a bad neighborhood. Get out now. Any of those things, like literally, if you start to feel like you're in a time neighborhood that's a bad neighborhood, or like if you're feeling like it's thin ice, meaning like there is no future here. Like if I keep walking a few more steps, like I am going to fall off a cliff or hit a brick wall and there's no more life and I go bye-bye. You have to make different choices. You have to be like, oh, rewind, get out of here, make a different choice, do something different now. It's literally your job. And when you, as a love-based person, find yourself in that realm of death, on the membrane of death, you experience a life review that you take with good humor, with a value and a desire to actually improve yourself so that you're not going to make the same mistakes again, because you know you do not belong in those peripheral distorted realities. You belong in the central core timeline connected to divinity, and you're going to make all of the choices that you possibly can to get back into alignment with that person, that version of you and who you are supposed to be. But these things that are stuck on the membrane of death, they don't really have a real version of who they are supposed to be. These are not like ascended masters. Like if you gave them enough chances, they would not be refined to the point of becoming an ascended master. Really key point for you to know about that. So first of all, if you got onto the membrane of death, you don't stay there as a poop smear forever until the cosmic scrub brush like me comes along and scrubs you. You go to the membrane of death, figure out what you did wrong from your bad math, and then you get reinserted and you try to do it again. How come these other guys from Tiamat and Mars didn't go onto the membrane of death and learn and grow and be like, oh, let me go back to my fateful moments and make better choices, and then I won't be in those positions. Instead, they're just stuck in the classroom. They're stuck in, if it's that movie, Defending Your Life, they're stuck in Judgment City. And they're like, hey, we refuse to move. We're not doing anything. And also, we're going to block it up for all the rest of the people. You're all going to have to stand behind me because I'm not going to move. So you guys can't move through. That's literally what they've been doing. Because if they were to have a real assessment of their consciousnesses and really change the decisions that they make in life, they would have to go all the way back to the fateful choice of emerging from infinity, not on a bridge of love. Like when you get your big printout, your clipboard of like all the mistakes you've ever made in your life, you're like, I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I know, but I'm not just talking about like the time that you whatever burned your creme brulee or something like that. I'm talking about like big life mistakes. And then you learn how to avoid these negative consequences from the choices that you made. The big life mistakes that these guys made were made foundational flaws. Their consciousness journey has foundational flaws, which is why you can't just give them the quick educational experience, like, oh, like you should have not ridden your bike without a helmet, or you should have not gotten on that plane and then you wouldn't have crashed into the ocean and you'd still be alive. Like their effed up choices are deep and profound effed up choices at the foundation of who they are in coming into existence in the wrong way. And that also really means that their educational process is pretty much not going to happen. No matter how much they're here in an attempt to be refined and to learn and to grow, because there is a problem from the very, very beginning of who and what they are, that the only answer for those guys is entropy or non-being. That's the only solution of all of the many, many solutions of looking at this like a math problem. You try out, plug in all these different solutions, all these different things, and none of the equations balance. And the only thing that works is if you rewind all the way back to that original decision to come into manifestation, but not as part of the cosmic music of biological music. They came in flawed and as something that is not truly alive. And so the culture on Tiamat, that was not true life. And the stuff on Mars is also not true life in the definition of how we talk about life: respirating, digesting, responding to stimuli, and reproducing. Those are like the Earth's objective materialist science definitions of what life is. They did not do those things. And when they screwed things up on Mars very, very badly, then they really didn't have any other technology to be able to inhabit. And your DNA is the closest thing to technology that they could inhabit. Now, let me characterize your DNA as not being a form of technology. Many people, when they start to have an inner awakening here and they use their inner eye to learn about their own body container and they start to scan themselves and learn about things, they're like, oh, DNA is an implant. It once was a machine and now it's been part harmonized into the biological world. I am part machine. No, 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 no. That is totally erroneous. And that's a red herring that is given to you to draw your consciousness astray when you're in the very, very first early moments of accessing the cosmic library, so that you will erroneously identify with technology as if it is self. DNA is not technology, but it is self. Big stuff. DNA is very pristine, is very valuable, is very positive, follows the cosmic conductor. Totally different characteristics than the type of technology that was used on Tiamat or on Mars. So please do not conflate the two. And yes, DNA, you could say it is a type of artifice or something that was created with intention, like my dress is created with intention. It didn't grow on a tree. Because some of you might even go back to your early memories, like as a soul, and you might even remember if you were part of the group of consciousnesses that brought DNA into reality in order to make a bridge of light that could take the abstractions of this world of pure potential and the blueprints of reality and manifest them as biological reality that we could inhabit. Because that was a group effort and it was a very, very sacred activity, but that was a very positive, sacred activity of building this bridge. And this bridge, again, is very sacred. I keep using that word. And whenever I do personal session work with people, I make it very clear that going into your DNA library, like that's the most sacred part of your body. And I tell everyone, like, your DNA is authorized personnel only. If your name is Tom, then your library is Tom's library, and it's like only Tom is allowed to come inside. And my library is Aurora's municipal library of Aurora Land. And I am the only one who is allowed to go inside of there. So I am a facilitator and a cosmic cleaning lady and cosmic law enforcement and protector and mentor. So I help a lot of people in sessions. I have them go with me. We go together into their DNA library so that way I can make sure to clean up any messes, put in new light bulbs, do maintenance, organization, like anything that I can do to help. But that's a huge amount of trust. So again, I have gained my ability to be able to go into other people's DNA, and I do so as a trusted guest. And I only do things that are essentially in alignment with divine intelligence. I'm not like, I think you need new curtains. Aurora wants to put up some rainbow curtains in here. It'll be great. I'm like, no, I think that this place should be shaped or should look like exactly what the divine cosmic composer wants your DNA to look like for your states of optimum health and vitality and freedom, and not for me to make my own arbitrary choices about redecorating in your DNA library. So, yeah, I'm very, very clear on that. I help to heal and restructure according to the patterns of how it's supposed to be. So wait, I have many, many more things to say, but I should check out the chat because I always have it like kind of off to the side so I don't get too distracted. Okay, but let me take these. Okay, good. So now Pedro, thank you for being here. Says, according to DOGE, the Doge, findings are millions over 100 years old in the US. I know they're going through the Social Security rolls. It's pretty interesting. And they're finding that there are people who are still getting Social Security monthly pension stipends that are like over 100, over 150. Some of them are like 200 years old. These are clearly not real people. And there are very, very real questions about how that can be going on. And please don't believe the anti-propaganda, which is saying that it has to do with an ancient computer programming language called COBOL and how it reads dates like, from 1900 to the year 2000, and then it doesn't have a way to be able to recognize that there is a new century. Please know that it is not merely an artifact of COBOL not being able to comprehend dates. And they updated all that stuff for anybody who was here in the year 1999 because they were worried about Y2K. I'm trying to sing that Prince song, Party Like It's 1999. They were all worried about partying like it's 1999 and whether Y2K would fry out all of the computers. And it did not. And also they did a lot of work to make sure that they could accommodate this. So this is like this is some old ass propaganda going on here, guys. You got to put on your skepticism shields immediately because you are in a dysfunctional world and you have to learn how to navigate your dysfunctional world. Caroline says, if that were so, it could mean that we have a good working medical system. I mean, okay, I will tell you, like, you could be living so well. Even if you didn't have any kind of magical intervention or huge technological upgrades or huge innovations, if you simply were able to claw back and re-receive and prevent the wasting of enormous amounts of the United States budget in what they call black ops, undisclosed budgetary expenditures that are often about weapons programs and things that they don't want you citizens to know about, you could all live like millionaires. That's really the truth. If you lived in a pristine system, the basic taxes that you pay to the government would be able to be used on excellent health care, excellent education, each person living at a very good quality of existence, excellent infrastructure, excellent police forces to keep your communities safe, excellent agriculture. You could subsidize all of the organic farms that you possibly could want and have all of the beautiful organic permacultures that you could possibly want. But that is not what's been happening, clearly. And it's because you're in this very dysfunctional world. Okay, so like in Atlantis, I mean, clearly we did not have government there. We all were divinely guided. We don't need an intermediary named government. But we had resources and we all used our resources very sensibly. So we had a beautiful, very elevated, high culture and high quality of existence. What happened? I want to go like this, like, what happened? And the answer is your DNA got invaded by this stuff that is non-eternal characteristics that are outright pathogenic, meaning disease causing, and they are the origins of disease in your world, both physical disease and also mental emotional disease and also social disease, as people's mental emotional state have a direct impact on the structures or templates that you use for how you apportion resources and leadership templates for leadership and power dynamics in your world, that people have mental problems. People have mental problems around here. People are mentally ill. That is what psychopathology is. And the mental illnesses are really about unhealthy negative entities or time presences that are living through the DNA that you contain. Flying rainbow lasagna. Let's always talk about solutions, because it can be disheartening to hear such an apt description of crap reality and be like, that's it. Like, I'm just gonna sit on the couch in a complete state of depression, wearing sweatpants and eating ice cream in nihilistic, existential dread. And I'm like, no, instead of doing that, do the flying rainbow lasagna. Put down that ice cream, put on some pants, and do the flying rainbow lasagna, because this is how you can clear out the pathogens from your DNA. First of all, each one of you, not only do you have your own municipal library, that is your name, whatever you are, it's the record of who you are, and also all human history and biological history and your multidimensional self across time. Like, it's very, very deep stuff. But you get to go through your library and you get to clean house. That is what flying rainbow lasagna is. The essence of the lasagna dance is to turn up the volume on positive characteristics that are genetic. That would be something like how to not get cancer. Be like, turn it up. That's a great song. The no cancer song. That's my jam. I love that song. And turn down the horrible song that is like how to get a tumor and how to die. All of these songs that are about how to die. Turn them down so that you're not hearing them, because we're not just talking about physical characteristics. Like, if I say turn down the characteristics of having cancer, you think that these exist as some kind of like abstractions about like a body part or whatever. Like, you're going to get whatever elbow cancer or something like that. But I'm really talking about a narrative wherein your body cells start to go awry, and then they grow a growth in your elbow, and then you have to have your arm amputated because it is cancer. That's a narrative story. It's not just a biological blueprint. So start thinking about every disease and everything that is an eventuality that ends on the membrane of death as a wrong story. It is an erroneous set of proposals or an equation that ends in a wrong end result, which is the end result of death. Because death is actually an aberration and something that does not exist, and you do exist. So the events of your life must all add up as like event one through all of the moments of your life, and then all the way up to ascended mastery. Okay. Now, wait, now I'm going to go back more into the curriculum of what I've taught for many years. Let's talk about the qualities of the versions of self that are here in the periphery. So sometimes these qualities are a version of self who simply just has a bad luck, like getting smashed on the highway, a truck runs over your face, or you get elbow cancer or whatever it is. So those are all ways that you can die. But also, much more fairly, you must comprehend that the versions of yourself that are in these parallel peripheral timelines that end in death have grotesquely distorted personality characteristics that aren't the real you. So it's not just the sense of like innocent old you, but with some cancerous tumors or something like that. It's more than that. It's really about versions of you that you would never be, stories of you that you would never inhabit. So some of those stories would be like who you would be if you were a hopeless drug addict, injecting morphine 20 times a day and sleeping in a cardboard box on the street. And that there's aspects of that life that's the culmination of a giant equation of dysfunction. And it's so dysfunctional and it requires so many non-truthful choices or non-truthful expressions of your characteristics that it becomes a distortion of who you are because all of those things are things that you would never do. And everything in order, so you're thinking how to rectify, you would go back to the first time that you ever chose to inject that drug, and instead of, if there's a time forking, like the road pathway forks, like, should I inject this drug or should I not inject this drug, and go study at the library, be like, don't inject this drug, go over here and do your homework at the library. And then, of course, if you make that choice, then you go off and you go to college and you have a whole life trajectory. And if you make this choice, you're like, nope, I'm going to go inject drugs with my friends and like abandoned building. And then like either you die of an overdose or achieve horrible diseases, or die of malnutrition, or die of robbing a bank because you're trying to pay for your drugs. Like all of those behavioral characteristics become a compounded, like exponentially expanded level of wrongness of who you're really not, because you started following characteristics and inner impulses that's not who you really are. Each one of us is a mixture inside of characteristics that are like who you really are and who you're really not. In very great levels of unfairness, this stuff has made it very, very hard to turn down the volume on the things that are not who we really are, that those things, this frequency here in particular, seems to amplify a lot of the innate characteristics that are not who we really are. This frequency absolutely amplifies cancer, and the sadly went into people, seemed to create an exacerbation of and intensification of that disease. We can't talk about it that much here, but you guys, I'm sure, have heard about it, and it's like sad and terrible and not at all what we want to be experiencing in our world. Like I have to kind of like just stay away from there. There's so many things that I can't say. Just know. And the things just because of this particular platform, not Zoom, but where when I do the upload on the alphabet influenced and controlled video sharing areas, that I can't say all these things that I would like to say. So let me just start from a different direction. You can see me kind of recalibrating here. Those things that were done in our environment in the past 4 years or so are kind of like the extra cherry on top of the crappy sundae of the very unfair circumstances of you trying to ascend and reach levels of your inner development. So just living in this world and attempting to be an ascended master, you already have many, I would say, cards stacked against you, or factors that are obstacles in your path. And some of those obstacles include the putis. The putis are not sacred teachers. They are not sacred ignorance. So now I get onto my rant about shadow work. Gird your loins, everyone. Prepare for battle. So shadow work, as I talk about it in my curriculum from 10 years ago, is based in the phenomena of optical light. Everyone, we will now be in art class. You're like, I like art class. It's better than math class. Good. Prepare for art class, children. Good. Just get this ready over here. Oh, okay. I have a whole new whiteboard. That's awesome. So here's an object. An ordinary object will make it a sphere, right? And I hope that you can tell that that has like, roundnesses to it. I'm kind of making it look like a globe so that you can tell that it is not just a circle. And this is the shadow that is cast by that sphere. And in art class, we always say, like, you put the shadow underneath the object, it makes the object sit down, and it really does. I have to color it in perfectly. It has to happen, guys. Okay, that's pretty good. And now let's draw beams of light. So this represents beams of light coming, of course, from a light source like the sun. These are beams of light, and they're going, 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 going. And of course, if beams of light do not hit an object, they would continue on endlessly in this direction. There would be, I don't know what just happened, but I'm scared, a lot of energy moving in this direction. But instead, this object represents matter, which is slowed down light, or light that has coalesced into a level of density that we recognize as the solid state of matter. And when light interacts with matter, it does not continue on its endless, infinite journey in one direction. Light can either bounce off of matter and go in a different direction, or it can kind of move through matter. Like if this was transparent glass, the light would, move through the glass and maybe it would come out the other side. Maybe it would come out in a slightly bent way. If it were a prism, it could come out in its rainbow form, or it could be slowed down entirely and absorbed by this object as a form of heat, right? But the key point is there is an area where light is not, because light is here. Because light is coalesced and all emphasized here, where I did the big scribbles, that means that light is not from here to here. The area of the shadow is an area where light does not travel. Light is information, it is intelligence, it is data, it is comprehension, it is self-knowledge. So the very valid sharing that I have from 10 years ago is that merely the existence of matter, which is not innately evil, leads to an area of sacred ignorance or darkness in each one of our lives. And that is what real shadow work is. When you are learning about the areas that there's no light or intelligence or life force there as a direct result of your being, and the coalescence and focus and emphasis of light as it exists in the epicenter of where you are. And that none of this is what New Age shadow work is. So this is the basic mechanics of how you make a drawing, how you experience formfulness, how you experience the balance of light and dark as a soul presence. And so what is satanic and inverted is when there's this very, very fake world that I'm going to use red as like a satanic color that has nothing at all to do with teaching you about ignorant aspects of yourself that you are ignorant of, but which claims to be the sacred darkness. So this over here has been co-opted by doo-doo, satanic doo-doo, that makes all sorts of gross poop chaos over here. And then it says, well, I'm your sacred teacher, and I'm here to get you out of your ignorance about the darkness. Like, it is literally doing everything it possibly can to prevent you from being able to learn and grow. It does not present information in a coherent way. It presents information and contains information in a hugely self-conflictory way, and it invalidates itself as a teacher over and over. So what I'm trying to say is the great lie of the satanic empire is that it tries to say, I am relevant, and this is in the voice of Satan, I am relevant and I'm here to teach you. But it's not actually here to teach you. None of this is a real lesson plan. And it's not relevant because it's not the real sacred darkness. Sacred darkness is about ignorance. And then what happens is it comes to light. Like, let's erase these poops and erase Satan. And what's supposed to happen is, as this area, let's change the color. As this area of matter becomes crystalline and perfectly organized, the light can flow through there, and the light flows through your matter and gets to the shadow. And then it flows through here. And then you have an enlightenment moment where you're like, oh, Holy effing shit. I didn't know that. And I didn't know that because you can suddenly look at everything here and learn about all these things that you couldn't learn about otherwise because photons are feelers. And so you didn't have the photonic sensory organs to be able to sense those areas of truthfulness. And that is what becoming an ascended master is. Essentially, you have no more conflict between the matter aspect of yourself and the darkness, ignorance aspect of yourself, because you become a perfectly clear conduit for divine intelligence and you encompass all of this as self, right? But that is so different than what's been going on with the satanic doo-doos. And I told you about that movie, The Dark Crystal, and they want to do some kind of Dark Crystal thing where here is satanic doo-doos. And then the satanic doo-doos say, well, I'm a part of you. It's not a part of you. The satanic doo-doos are literally what invaded your world at the end of Atlantis or are impending to invade. They are not your sacred shadow. They are something that shouldn't even be here and shouldn't even be in existence. And it is one of their greatest lies or propagandas is a better word to try to motivate you to say, oh, I'm your sacred shadow and you can't be free unless you, key point, hug and kiss me. You're going to have to love me. You're gonna have to love me. And I'm dirty and gross and horrible and rapey and, just pathogenic and yucky. And you're gonna, if you want to get anywhere in the world, kid, you're gonna have to hug me. And that is all completely invalid. That proposal is really saying from something that is a genetic invader, that's what that satanic doo-doo is. It's basically saying, I'm invading your DNA and we're having a fight in your body. And in order for you to experience any amount of quality of existence, you're going to have to stop fighting me and learn to live together and learn to coexist. Please beware. That is one of the most dangerous things that you're facing. That's the great peril because it's also on this planet. When you talk about the Doge and you talk about government efficiency, it's not really about government efficiency. It's not really about someone like you guys in this class who are good, well-meaning people who might be working at a government bureaucracy that, is wasteful or fraudulent or, not doesn't have its stuff together on the higher dimensional levels. We're really talking about something that is innately flawed and shouldn't be in our world and needs to be routed out. Just like if you have infections or cancer in your body, those things are not supposed to be living in your body. And could you imagine, or please don't imagine, but the gall of cancer cells or cancerous tumor in your body saying, hey, I'm supposed to be here. This is my home too. And if you want to have any quality of existence, you're going to have to learn to live with me. I'm talking now as a cancerous tumor. Like, no, you're like, no, get the F out. I have no obligation to support or sustain you. You're a cancerous tumor. Get the F out of me. And I will have a better quality of life when you get the F out of me. That's really, really important stuff. And I am saying that about these bureaucrats. I don't think that they're just well-meaning people who went into bureaucracies and have been working at sign cures. And now they're like, no, harumph, I have to find a better job. I really think that there's something in their DNA that are these pathological levels of consciousness that have been woven into their good parts. Their proportions are probably 75% pathogenic and only 25% Atlantean, natal, actual human, because you know what? The 75% is probably being kind of lazy, being kind of crappy, not really being a self-motivated person, not really doing a good job. If you look at the hallmarks of those positions that are being culled as wasteful, they are, or the hallmark of what it is to be a government bureaucrat, what do? They stamp things. They have no joy. They are just bureaucrats. Stamp, stamp, or typing on the computer. So there's no creativity. There's no innovation. There is conformity. There is regularity, so conformity is doing what the government says. Regularity is doing everything the same. Think about like the IRS, like every year you file your taxes on this day. Every year they do the paperwork. Every year they send you this piece of paper. The human becomes an automaton. 75% pathological does not always mean that they're like going to stab you in the eye. 75% pathological can mean that they are 75% in automaton. And that lack of free will and motivation and innovation and engagement with reality, it directly relates to the origins or non-origins of technologically based life that came in on the planet that was destroyed that we know as Tiamat. That when you come in on a bridge of love and you're a real biological human, you have innate levels of like life force energy. You're gushing with life force energy. You have so much creativity. You have so many ideas. You have so much joie de vivre and creative juices. You want to make stuff happen. You want to make babies. You want to do stuff. You have hopes and dreams. Hopes and dreams. What is the hallmark of a government bureaucrat? A person who has no hopes and dreams. A person who has a very boring and bored demeanor and who simply does the same thing like an automated person over and over. And of course, that is not only in government bureaucracy, but this Doge is really just exploring government waste and bureaucracy. Of course, those automated humans do exist also in private corporate infrastructure and other places as well. But those are characteristics that are not positive characteristics. They are not life-giving. They do not bring you towards longevity and coherence. So if there's a person who's 75% wanky bureaucrat and only 25% real person, then if you turn down the volume, if you flying rainbow lasagna and you turn down the volume on all of their instrumentation that is like lazy, boring, not well engaged, and all these other things, like you just have like a tambourine and some flutes. Like you don't have that much music. You don't have that much person there being vibrant and making things happen. And you can ask me all sorts of questions telepathically. I can hear like, what do we do about those people? And can they learn? And can they grow? And can their proportions change? And can their soul blah, blah, blah? And the answer is this. It is a complex answer. And it also relates to, can Hitler ever become an ascended master? This is part of my notes that I did 10 years ago. In a pristine system, and if you had an infinite amount of time, then everybody would eventually become an ascended master because it's baked into who you are. If you had an infinite amount of time and a pristine system, and you could go through the system for as long as you possibly wanted to. All right, we got to talk about Groundhog's Day now. I'll drink some hydration. Hold on. I'll get to more questions. Wait, Groundhog's Day first. So you guys, I'm sure, have watched this movie at this point. It's a brilliant comedic movie. And it basically is a supernatural tale of a man who is a very self-serving weatherman who is very greedy and unkind to other people, self-centered and bad towards women. And he gets stuck in this time loop. And he is what is known as meta, the shorthand. He is metacognitively aware or awake in the dream. He keeps going through the loop of Groundhog's Day, waking up in the morning, going through the same events of the day, and then meeting some mishap that is always new and dying, but he doesn't go on his cosmic journey and learn about himself. He just finds himself waking up at the beginning of the same day. He's stuck in an endless time loop. And at first it brings him huge amounts of despair. He doesn't know how to get out of the time loop. And he has a sense that he's being punished in a hell or a purgatory because he feels like he was a piece of crap human because he was a piece of crap human. And he goes through all these different levels, which is kind of like gluttony, where he just eats everything. And then nihilism, where he just either like self-destructs, kills himself, kills other people, goes through all of that. But at a certain point of almost innumerable cycles, he decides that he's going to try something different. He's actually going to try to learn and try to be a better person. And these tiny incremental changes done over many multiple time loops do bring him on a journey of soul evolution, where what he does as he is exploring this town, this 1 24-hour period of the town, he learns about people. He learns like, oh, somebody needs something. He actually has the power to anticipate their needs. Next cycle, he can go there and he can give them some food or something that they need. Or here's an accident waiting to happen. He can pull the person out of the way. He begins to do acts of kindness to others and actually starts to communicate to people that are there and not just treat them like objects, to connect through actual genuine heart and compassion, learns and grows and becomes a better person. That's the idea of what this type of soul refinery can be. But that is if you start off with good stuff inside. The analogy in that movie would be that the main character's soul was a good biological soul that had just become encrusted with filth and dysfunction from being in the world, and that then he went through this soul reclamation process of learning about, how he was pathogenic so that he could grow and return to himself, right? But if you start out as doo-doo, you're not going to get refined into something better. Hold on one moment. I need to have some more water. So I'm just going to let's have a brief break for hydration, food, or anything else you need to do with your body. Hold on. If that main character from Groundhog's Day was a 89% or 99% of cosmic doo-doo, and you put him through an experience like that, it really would not be refining out the goodness of his soul and helping that to grow and come forward. It would really just be a recognition that this whole entire person or organism just really needs to go to entropy and be in a non-being state. So if you are emanated on a bridge of love, if you are a biological container, if you have a real soul and a real sense of self, then yes, you can purge away the aspects of self that are not truthful and revive and even grow the parts of you that are truthful. And so that would be in that fictional account of that movie. He had some aspects of himself that were good, truly generous, truly compassionate, truly eternal, and that if you water those plants in the garden, that then they will grow and you pull out the weeds and you have a real person. But that is not possible with the putis. And that is not possible with many aspects of demonic consciousness. In fact, what love truly is acceptance. So love is not just cute baby animals holding hands. Love is really the acceptance that things are what they are, without a need or requirement for them to be different. These very demonic things try to hold up this refinery of consciousness and try to say, it's not love. This is me being totally mocking, like, it's not love because you're having to change and be different in order to get back to God. This is the example that God doesn't love you. This is what a demon says. Don't listen. Don't listen, because none of this is meant to be like the behavioral control or the hoops, arbitrary hoops that you have to jump through or hurdles to be able to please God, to return to God's presence. That is not what this is. That is how human, very, very flawed and satanically inverted religion presents the process of existential soul growth and being alive to you. It says, you're sinners and you're bad. And if you want to get to heaven or return to God's presence, you have to be really different than you are. And I don't love you as you are. Pretty much saying God does not love you as you are. We love Cheeky as she is. I just checked on her like 5 minutes ago. She's doing great. Hi. Hey, let's have a hug. Cheeky, you're loved just as you are with everything. There you go. We love Cheeky just as she is. She's doing great. And she went to the doctor yesterday, and the doctor says she's doing great too. So thank you to everybody who sends her positive energy. Good, 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 good. Okay, good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I don't know if I need to give Cheeky a meatball. We'll see. Cheeky, do you want a meatball? Our neighbor made cheeky meatballs. Hold on one second. Your present level of experience is not a torment house of horror. It's not an existential nightmare a la Groundhog's Day. And it is not a series of obstacles like God as some kind of technician in a lab, like a scientist in a laboratory, making you run through some kind of time labyrinth so that that way you go in the right direction. You know, like if you're a lab in one of these, sorry, if you're a rat in one of these labyrinths, it's like, oh, I went to the wrong side, I got shocked. Then I went to the other side and I got shocked. And then I learned I wanted to go right down the middle. And then I will get to whatever, you know, the reward at the end of the labyrinth that's set up by this psychopathic, torturing, white-coated scientist. God is not any of those things. God is not saying, like, you're so sinful and you're so bad and you're so wrong. In order for you to get back to be with me, you have to purge an enormous amount of what you define as self and jump through these hoops. That is not what God is saying. And I also hope that it's very, very clear that you're not in the pristine system that is what God, the true super genius and the true architect of the cosmos, really intended. That system is the system where nobody ever dies. There is no pathogenesis. There aren't these boulders and difficulties to ascension, and everybody ascends. So ascension is an inevitability in a pristine system, and if you have enough opportunities. That's like saying, if you have a video game, life is not a video game, but let's use a video game as an analogy. If you're in a video game, sorry, in an arcade playing a video game, and you have an infinite number of quarters, and the arcade never closes and your mom never arrives to say honk honk honk, it's time for you to come home and, you know, whatever, eat your dinner, then you will eventually get so good at playing the video game that you'll make it through all the levels and all the screens, and you will ding 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 get the high score and be an ascended master. Oh, hold on one second. It's hugely presumptive to think that each one of us will have an infinite number of opportunities at playing the video game. You do not have guaranteed an infinite number of quarters. So, you know, I talked about how starting at this position here or at this position here, and then going through all these multiple repetitive time loops until you finally get into this position here. How many time loops is it? How many wrong notes do you get to play? And can you minimize the number of wrong notes? Like on a piano, there's 88 keys. So there's one key that will be correct and 87 wrong keys. Do you have to play 87 wrong notes before you get to the right note? Can you play 47 wrong notes and then play the right note? Yes, you can. Can you play 2 wrong notes and then get to the right note? And the answer is yes, you can. And you can also play 0 wrong notes and get to the right note. And that's what you're actually supposed to do. In Atlantis, we all play 0 wrong notes and get directly to the correct notes. That also means that each one of us in that world is or are exactly who we are supposed to be. Our characteristics and who we are is 100% self. We are 0% bored bureaucrat. We do not have bureaucracies in Atlantis. Literally, there would be no one to occupy those positions. We would never create them for ourselves. We would never inhabit them. Our life is one long, innovative, non-repetitive adventure. Like, I don't even know how to describe it because you guys have so few lifestyles that are like this, but maybe someone who's, you know, a backpacker or living in a van on a world traveling experience, you know, blogging about their life adventures and totally unpredictable with an enormous bank account, and they never have to worry about money. That's more of what our lives were like or are like in Atlantis, like a never-ending experience with huge variety of opportunities, a safe adventure. Of course, like on all the adventures in Atlantis, you're never going to have whatever fall off a mountain, get run over by a truck, or die of pathogenesis in some way. And you're definitely not going to die of old age, and you're definitely not going to die of some kind of a disease like cancer because we didn't have those diseases. You will simply live like a very long, fulfilling life that will always be different every day. And who are you in that life? You're a soul, so you are basic consciousness that is unclothed by the ego, but you're also the ego. So now we have to talk about this. This is what I start off with in my notes. The ego, the temporal self, it fears death because it fears its own unmaking. In this world that we're in right now, there is the ego, and the ego is a temporal self, and it is temporal means temporary. It is not eternal. And the thing that the ego hates the most and is most afraid of is the idea of the ego being bye-bye. And I taught you already, and I'll reiterate, when you came here as a little infant before you were indoctrinated into the truths of your culture, your DNA is like totally free and feral. And you're like, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. And then they taught you about death, or you encountered death, and your DNA changed its whole entire dance in order to accommodate the truth. One day you're going to die. And that became the foundation truth of everything moving up to this moment when hopefully, when the first time you heard my work, and then I was like, no, flying rainbow lasagna, you don't have to die. Hopefully that created an entirely new dance inside of you. That was the you don't have to die dance, because it is actually a flawed proposal to think and expect that you have to die, that you don't have to explore all of those 87 wrong notes before you get to the right note. That is the world and the timeline of ascended mastery and divine perfection. Ascended mastery means you have perfected your personality characteristics and you are 100% your true self in every way, in how you speak and express yourself. So every word that you choose, every gesture of your body, how you walk, how you interrelate with the world around you, every morsel that you eat, literally everything that you do. And there are some people who have achieved these levels of attainment and been witnessed in the world. And they are known as ascended masters, and they're known as saints, and they are looked at as spiritual athletes. Like the one guy that did this, I'm thinking of this one particular person. He was from the Sufi world. His name was Rumi. He wrote just spontaneous poetry all the time. Like I bring him up just because he comes to mind. Like I said, every single word that you say when you're an ascended master is eloquent and perfect. It is pure poetry. When you are in that ascended master path of least likelihood, your life is art. Every single thing that you do and say is an expression of divine willpower and divine intelligence. That means that you're expressing God in everything you do and say. And the words that people choose when they're in that state, it's beautiful, poetic, just perfect. You're not like, please pass the ketchup. You're really saying things that are deep and profound. Why is this? Let's go back to one of these whiteboards that I was drawing on earlier. Because, hold on a minute with patience. We want to choose this one over here. Because when you get to this place over here, just getting a pen, hold on. When you get to this place over here of the singularity, what is happening is you are really connecting as if you are a neurological impulse in the mind of God, and as if you have jumped across the synaptic gap. So now let's draw the synaptic gap for you. Can I move all this stuff aside? cannot really move this stuff aside. Can I move this stuff aside? I cannot move this stuff aside. I can move this stuff aside. I'm so silly sometimes, guys. Okay, now I'm drawing synapses and nerves. This is going to be awesome. Just give me a minute. Okay. This is meant to represent the end of a nerve. All right, so here's the nerve. This goes all the way up to your brain, right? And then here is another nerve. Boom. And this goes, let's say, like down to your toes. And this area where I am scribbling in black is known as the synaptic gap or the synaptic cleft. What happens in a nerve impulse is that this green impulse represents your nerves moving along almost like an electrical signal along your nerve pathways. And then it gets to this end over here, and it's like the Grand Canyon. This is a big, giant, empty space that is like hundreds of miles across and on the level of your biology. It's very, very far away. It's an electrical signal that it doesn't have a way to jump across. So what happens is that electrical signal must be changed into something that is a chemical signal. And that's what these red dots represent. Molecular biochemical signal that can go across the synaptic gap. These are what neurotransmitters are. So this gets translated into neurotransmitters, goes across the synaptic gap, and then reaches the other side over here, and then gets translated again into a waveform impulse that can continue on its journey through the body. And maybe I made it a little bit confusing because I should have done it like coming from this direction, going up in this direction, because that might be visually confusing, because that is literally exactly what you are doing with this time quadrant over here. That made a weird thing. I'm just going to go with it. This over here represents a synapse in the mind of God. And everything that you're doing in moving from this area here to this area here is to learning to jump across the synaptic gap of a one nerve impulse in the mind of God. So to contextualize this, your whole entire life from birth to either death or eternal ascension is one little neural impulse moment in the mind of an enormous divine creature that is so enormous, multivariate, multidimensional, and complex that it is pretty much beyond what you can comprehend with your limited mind and neurology and imagination. But this is why I call this particular teaching the I am God circuit and the I am God moment. This is the I am God moment. When you go through all of these erroneous time loops and you hit the membrane of death over and over and over and learn all of these things about what you're not supposed to do, it is inevitable that at a certain point you will begin here, travel up the path of least likelihood, remembering that you're God, being connected to God the whole entire time. And then at a certain point you will go like, ding, 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 ding. That moment of ding, 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 when you get there, you have this thought structure. This is what you think verbatim. I am God. That's it. Every single one of us. Now, you do not think Aurora is God, and I say this every time in class, even though Aurora is God, but whatever is you, your epicenter of consciousness, your viewpoint from your life, you have gone through this whole entire refinery of consciousness and played all the wrong notes in order to figure out who you're not, in order to figure out who you are, so that you can come to that moment of culmination here where you can think the thought, I am God. And that is directly analogous to what happens when you, as a neural impulse, jump across this synaptic gap and make it to the other side and have that connection, ding, 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 ding. And the thought that happens when that bridge is made is the thought, I am God. So this is very, very big, deep stuff because earthly human religion that I'm hugely at odds with and philosophies mostly externalize the sense of God. They mostly tell you that God is something up there, out there, external to you. God presented either as like the ultimate puppet master, the great conductor, the great composer, the Shakespearean sonnet writer that writes the play of your life, or as a judge who harshly judges and criticizes you and maybe even destroys you if you're doing the wrong thing, or that ultimate people pleaser. You're going to have to please this guy in order to get into heaven. He's the ultimate like bouncer slash gatekeeper to make sure that you're VIP who belongs in the VIP lounge. And when I tell you that God is you and that you're on this whole entire journey through this refinery of consciousness, and that when you make it to that moment, you think the thought, I am God, and that is the culmination of not only one life, but many, many, many lives. Because when you look at this sculpture, you see there's at least four vortices, one that's coming upward like this, one that's here, one that's here, one that's here. There's one that's implied from here and one that's implied from here. And that's just in one chakra of your body. And you have seven. So you have at least six of these life vortices in one chakra, but you have seven chakras. And then you have many, many, many smaller sub chakras and vortices throughout your body. The answer is that you are a multidimensional self. So traditional views of in multiple incarnations tell you that, like first you lived as Cleopatra, then you lived as Vincent van Gogh, and then you lived as, whoever you are today, because it seems rather linear. Like first came ancient Egypt, and then came historical France in the 1800s, and then there's the year now of the 2000s. But that is not how your refinery of soul happens. You actually are all of those people. You actually are all of these well-known historical figures, but also totally anonymous historical figures. And all of these people that you are slightly at an angle or are wobbling like this. All of like, you're like Cleopatra facing the membrane of death. You're Vincent van Gogh facing the membrane of death. P.S. That guy could have lived a much better life. If they had just given him like some social support and some CBD hemp, that guy would not have killed himself. You get it? I'm sorry. But and then also sometimes I'm joking, but I'm being truthful. Um, the goal is to get both Cleopatra and Vincent van Gogh to change the direction that they are oriented until they are living as ascended masters, knowing that they're God, and get in alignment with that. So let's draw this for you because these are concurrent realizations. So Cleopatra died. Both of those guys self-destructed. She was like, bring me an asp. And he was like, nobody likes me. I'm going to kill myself. And both of those would be avoided, deaths and destructions that would be avoided by making different choices. So they're actually good historical figures to use. Okay, here's infinity. This large purple dot represents infinity. And now I'll show these smaller paths of least likelihood that radiate outward. It's almost like a dandelion's head. I'm trying to make these kind of the same length, but my pen is not that easy to work with. So just pretend that they're all the same length, okay? And there's an infinite array of these. And these are all your paths of being an ascended master. And every single one of these has a vortex where here's the beginning, 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 beginning, beginning. And every single one of these has membranes of death. Let's draw the membranes of death as best I can, because this is going to get to be a little bit imperfect. But you're starting to see the complexities of all of these many, many, many multiple time vortexes. That's the worst one. I was doing pretty good. Then I got saucy, got confident, and it stopped being perfect. That's good. Few more. That one's kind of weird. that still works, and this one here, and this one here. Good. All of these are ascended masters. Or let's say all of these represent time vortexes where the person has the potential to become an ascended master. So here's Cleopatra. She's going in the wrong direction. That's a weird arrow. She's definitely going to get bitten by an asp if she goes in that direction. And here's Van Gogh. Van Gogh's going to shoot himself in the head going in that direction. None of that is right. So for both of these historical figures, and then here's you. Let's do you. You're at this angle over here. You're not doing so good. You're at an angle and you need to change. All of you guys need to change at once. And when you do that, you go, you're going to change a little bit in this direction. You're going to go a little bit in this direction. Then you're going to go a little bit in this direction. Then you're going to learn and grow again and go through another level of refinement where then you'll go more in this direction, and this one's going more, this is supposed to be kind of a light color. I don't know if you can see it properly, or in this direction. And then finally, then you remember who you are and you go in this direction, and you go in this direction, and you go in this direction. So I'll go back to my face and kind of act that out. You know, you start off in the wrong direction, but then you learn and grow, and you move in this direction, learn and grow, move in this direction, and then finally return to that central core timeline. And each time, it's not just that you're learning like, oh, I should have made better choices. Like I shouldn't have gotten on that plane because the plane crashed and I died. You should be making better choices about who you are in the world, just like Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day. It's not, life is not just like a video game where your objective is to see how long can I live? It is to see how well can you live. It is to see how deeply you can touch other people's lives. It is to see how much you can share your gifts with the world. It is to see how much you can be your divinely connected, authentic self in the world. It's not a simple objective like a commodification where it's like quid pro quo. I sell you this and you sell me this, and then you get into heaven. That's also that transactional nature is what I do not agree with in many of these religions, which are really behavioral control systems. Christianity is one of them. You know, Judaism and Christianity, there's either 613 commandments in the Torah or 10 commandments in the Christian doctrine, and you follow those commandments, and those are like the rules that you follow in order to get into heaven. And heaven is about much more than following just a recipe of rules. Heaven is really about self-construction and constructing who you are as a person. And so what we are tasked with doing when we come into this world as a soul is you have potential and you want to grow your potential or grow your light. And that's why we come here. So you're not supposed to come here with like 100 units of energy and then be like, okay, I have 100 units of energy. Like I'm ready to go home and remember that I'm God and say, I am God. You actually are meant to have more than 100 units of energy. It's the whole purpose for coming here. So I do not have a physical diamond, but I joke every time in class, this is a Herkimer diamond. And we're going to pretend that like this is my engagement ring. I'm engaged to someone who's very, very wealthy. And I've been given this giant diamond engagement ring. And when light enters into this beautiful diamond, it doesn't just pass through as a transparent conduit. It is brilliant, so it bounces around in all the facets inside, and then it emerges with a sparkle. That sparkle is extra energy. The brilliance of how light emerges from a diamond is the extra energy. You are becoming a diamond body. The hyperorganization of your body, biological features, and your soul are an innate part of this aspect of self-cultivation and success, and are totally the same as becoming an ascended master. Structuring all of the water in your body and all the fluids in your cellular structure, and also structuring yourself as you move through time behaviorally and with your thought structure. Being shaped the right way when you move through time, both in how your cells are transforming and also what you're saying and thinking and doing with all of that collection of cells. It's a very, very high bar to have to jump over with a huge amount of artistic and spiritual achievement. So being an ascended master is an enormous attainment. And yes, you should have several chances at it. It's not like that's it, like no soup for you. Like that was it, kid. That was your one chance. You hit the membrane of death, and now you're out of here. So you want to have a balance between like being able to be like, okay, I'm a good person, tried as hard as I could, but I did the wrong things and I hit the membrane of death. You get your life assessment, and then you get back out there onto the playing field and get a chance to do it over in a better way. But the problem that you've been having are the bad students, the sweat hogs, the ones who refuse to learn. And not only do they refuse to learn, but they really want to stand in the way of you and your educational process as a soul. And so in like Bill Murray's movie, he learns and he grows, and the world around him, the people are actually consistent, and the world makes sense. Like if you do something kind for someone, like you get a reward. And if you act like an a-hole towards them, then you kind of get demoted, right? But you're in a world right now where people who are a-holes have been rewarded, including receiving cushy work from home sinecure positions and being paid by pathological government bureaucracies that are not positive social structures, that are even satanic, and that even get a lot of their energy to make people's paychecks from satanic activities. So here in this world, often the wicked are rewarded, guilty people are rewarded, crappy and non-self-actualized behavior is often rewarded. And people who are excellent, who focus on excellence, having boundaries, who are highly intelligent, who have an enormous amount of integrity, goodness, generosity, compassion, kindness, and are hugely divinely connected, are often pooped upon and not given positive job opportunities and not given resources, and their lives are made difficult by not only government bureaucrats, but specifically by the guys who are the pooties on the membrane of death. They interfere with the lives of the living. So to correctly characterize them, they have never been truly alive as you are truly alive. Let that sink in, because they don't have the same view and experience of love that you do. You should not pity them. Be like, oh, poor demon. But just comprehend that to them, love is really a food that they cannot access and eat effectively. But love is an innate part of your nature to the point like you don't even think about it. Like I have brown eyes. I don't sit around all day long being like, I have brown eyes, have brown eyes, brown eyes, brown eyes. It's just like, that's just me. And it's just my eyes, eyeballs, just this color. They are just this way. When love is an innate part of who you are, you don't have to sit around all day long being like, love, love, I'm making a love, love, love. Like you just are loving. You just are that without a lot of effort. But you have to effort a lot when there are pooties standing in your way as obstacles, and also pootie created hardware. I make a face because this stuff is all really, really unfair. So it's unfair enough that the pooties would be a part of the inhibitory aspect of your natural ascension process in this layer of reality. But it's even worse when they amplify their pootiness and use different forms of technology to try to inhibit or prevent your ascension. And when you look at things that are written on this list, it is 100% a list of things that were brought into existence specifically to inhibit or prevent or slow down your ascension. And when did those things come into existence, class? The worldwide health crisis known as the pandemic in 2019, 2020. Correct. Very good job, class. That was not by accident, because that's literally when we are on the verge of this spiritual transformation and springboard into spiritual attainment, that is ascension, that this technology would be deployed to be like, oh yeah, kid, nice ascension you got there. It'd be a real shame if somebody messed it up and pooped on it and made it not what it's supposed to be. but you will recover from this. Believe me. Let me go into more of these comments here. Um, okay, thank you. Pedro was cheering on my rant. Yes. Um, so I don't know if I ranted enough, but let me really fully rant and just incinerate everything about New Age shadow work. So what's flawed about New Age shadow work is that you're in a world where not everything is you. That really, in order to transcend this level of experience, like if you want to be Bill Murray who gets out of Groundhog's Day and stops moving in negative time loops, you do that not by hugging a demon and saying, "Oh, you're me, hug me, kiss and smooch." Not at all. If you do that, what you're essentially doing is taking, here's your different genetic quotients, like the real you and then crappy stuff that's not really you that came from Mars. And Mars is saying, like, hug me, baby, like some kind of gross, like Beetlejuice, like grotesque, corrupt creature that's like, give me some love, come on, baby. And you're like, oh, I don't really want to hug you. I don't really love you at all. You're gross and, what's the word? Repellent to me. But he's saying, like, I'm never going to give you any peace until you hug and kiss me. And so my rant is New Age shadow work of the people that are the fluffy bunnies of the New Age world. And they're like, I have to hug you. Let's hug. Kumbaya. And then this is hugging a demon. Kumbaya. All the doo-doos are part of me. And that's not true. Those doo-doos are not a part of you. And that action of melding your pristine, truthful nature in your DNA with gross pathogens who don't belong in existence is a betrayal. It is a pollution of DNA everywhere, and it affects everyone else who has DNA. So when you make that terrible choice, you screw up things for yourself and for everyone else. DNA is an artifact or an artifice or something that was created, but it was created as a divine art piece that could be a bridge between the potentials of pure light and the physicality world of embodiment. And it's a huge privilege to have DNA. It's a wonderful miracle. It is a library that connects you to all life everywhere, essentially, from deep antiquity into the potentials of the future. And DNA is so sacred that when I see it being mistreated here in this time place, I get very, very distressed because the words right here that happened were something that distorted and changed DNA. And that's called a genetic crime. And when you do a genetic crime, it doesn't just involve this generation. It percolates through and radiates outward and sings across all time. It is a very, very bad thing to do. I'm going to use Bitcoin and the blockchain as an allegory because you're familiar with it. DNA is like the blockchain, or you're also familiar with the concept of the Akashic records. Even please know that the Akashic records, and to a lesser extent your morphogenic field, have been edited and have been influenced. But these are supposed to be indelible records that cannot be changed, and that the value is in the purity of the information that they carry across vast levels of time. So the Bitcoin blockchain contains the original transactions from whatever 2010 or whenever it was first invented. And Cliff High, he's one of these funny old dude internet guys, but he talks about being in the early days of Bitcoin, and he sold a bunch of Bitcoin so he could buy some socks for Christmas. And there's another famous story of someone selling like 10 Bitcoins that they could buy a pizza. And of course, 10 Bitcoin, if you had held on to it for 15 years and you had it today, would be worth over $1 million. So that would be a very, very expensive pizza. And we joke about Cliff High's socks. But the point that I bring up is both of those transactions are written on the blockchain. You, if you were an archaeologist of data, could go back into the transactional blockchain of the Bitcoin cryptocurrency network, and you could find that exact transaction, be like, yep, that's the socks that Cliff bought in 2010. And you can see everything that's ever happened. It is amazing. It's transparent. And that is also what the Akashic records are supposed to be. These are also supposed to be, of course, indelible, so something that can't be hacked. Not like you're going to erase out the part where you bought the socks and then write something else in there. Because if you could do that, what would happen? Then you'd be like, oh, yeah, like I actually bought 35 Bitcoin back in 2010. Look at me, I have 35 Bitcoins now. Like if you can erase and change the truth of the record over here, it percolates forward into who you are right now. And so this is the real issue with DNA. DNA is supposed to be like your blockchain. It's supposed to be this extensive and eternal record of everything that's ever happened. Like one example is before humans developed the capacity to give live birth, you needed to have a particular gene that is how to get the fertilized egg to attach to the lining of the womb so that that way you can have babies. Like up until that point, everyone was like, well, you want to have babies, just deposit your eggs in a stream and your husband will deposit some sperm on top of them. And then you will have, babies out of it. Like they didn't have a way to have babies inside babies. They only had outside babies. And then at a certain point, you got the gene. I think it was from an animal similar to a rabbit. It retrovirally snipped itself into the human code and made it possible for the next generation of humans to have babies inside. And then that became your thing. And it's called being a mammal, having babies inside. So you can actually see in your DNA of today that particular gene and recognize that that's a time reverberative connection from who you are in this moment to your ancestor or progenitor, however many millennia ago that gene insertion happened. So it's not like time, wait, let's use my scarf over here. It's not like, oh, time is so far apart. It's just like this decorative, cozy scarf. And here's me now, and here's the original gene from millennia ago. What's really happening is both of those moments inhabit and overlap inside of you. Deep stuff. Your DNA is so complex and is so miraculous, and the depths of profundity regarding your DNA it's a whole lifetime's worth of self-education just to learn about what DNA is and how it behaves. And then, of course, mastering it so that you can dance lasagna through your DNA is like the ultimate, of what you can do. It's like learning that you have a piano and learning everything about pianos and then playing a beautiful symphony on the actual piano. But DNA, the way it's being treated here is beyond folly. Because if it were just like stupid people doing stupid things, I would just be like, these are stupid people doing stupid things. But these are like corrupt, pathogenic people doing such stupid things. It's worse than a nuclear bomb. Like when you think about like, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? Like just dropping a nuclear bomb or a bunch of them on the surface of the earth and you just incinerate everything and leave toxic waste for whatever, 6 billion years. The DNA destruction that is happening in this generation right in front of you is worse than the dropping of a nuclear bomb. That bad. Be like, that's it, Aurora. I'm just going to jump off a bridge. Please don't. Please don't, survivors of suicide. Please forgive me my lightheartedness, but please do not self-destruct, although this can be very disheartening to learn about it, because there are ways that you can supernaturally dance and reclaim and purify your DNA. That is why I invented the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, because guess what, kids? You already had problems with your DNA, got genetically invaded, and a bunch of bad, gross stuff became intertwined into your body. And it's not the real you. And that's not something that you should hug and kiss and make friends with in a mime or a posturing of what love is. Love is really about setting boundaries and asserting or making choices about who you are and whom you are not. In our lives, each one of us will face moments of great decision where we will make a choice and behaviorally exemplify, this is who I am and this is who I'm not. And it might be something that's in the workplace where they're asking you, like, well, will you lie? Will you falsify records? If you just sign this piece of paper, you'll make a lot of money. Yes, people will die and the world will be polluted, but you will make a lot of money. And you can stand forward in that moment and you can say, like, something? This is who I am, and this is who I am not. I'm not going to sign your stupid paper. You can shove it up your orifice, and I'm going to go find a different job. And when you do that, your life path goes from being like this to being like this because you are exhibiting more of your true characteristics. So, survival in the refinery of time is about so much more than just avoiding plane crashes or avoiding poisonous food or any of those things. It really is about making choices that exemplify who you are as a real character. Now, of course, when you're making choices, this as an innate by definition, innately shows that I'm not talking about any level of determinism or fate. Those both abrogate the necessity or amputate your connection to your free will. When you are in free will, you make choices that change the direction of where your life is going. But what if you make a choice in your belief system to embrace determinism and you say, I am nothing. My willpower is nothing. I make no choices. Everything is made by some larger Shakespearean drama writer named God, and he makes me do everything in my life. And don't ask me. I just work here. I'm just a stupid actress. I just follow the play, and I'm really nothing. When you do that and make a choice to embrace that worldview, you kill your own soul. The choice to embrace a deterministic reality is the choice to abdicate your level of responsibility, to step down from the throne of your humanity and of your divine connection, and to reject responsibility for your contributions in the world. And it is really how souls die. So determinism and also certain levels of atheism, which are very much embedded within the technocracy. So technocrats look at DNA and they're like, oh, DNA is determinism. You get this book at the beginning of your life and it makes you do things and go places and experience stuff. And it's all the fault of your DNA. And also, if you want to change someone's behavior, just tweak their DNA. I'm just going to CRISPR you. I don't like who you are. I'm going to change you. Well, snip these troublemaker parts out and put in these non-troublemaker parts. And now you're totally someone who I like. That is what this stuff is meant to do. That is really distressing stuff. That happened 4 years ago, have caused a lot of disease and a lot of death. And now they're promoting a concept of a new series of that would then fix the problems that were made 4 years ago. And people who are sensible are like, we don't want any more problems. We don't want any more of those things going into our skin. We don't want any more skin pollutions. And we don't think that a fresh round of skin pollutions is in any way going to heal or fix the outcomes of the original pollutions. The original pollutions were done to destroy free will. They were done to also cut off areas in people's cognitive neurology structures so that they couldn't experience connection to God. So it's also another way of like cutting people off from God. But it was also meant to cut people off from their free will and to kill their soul by having them live a story of really being totally not in control of their lives. So now when I characterize the typical government bureaucrat and who that person is and how they walk through the world, a large portion of their 75% of their negative, non-truthful personality characteristics have to do with passivity and having someone else tell them what to do and not being fully self-actualized and living in freedom, creating their own life and choosing what they want to create and manifest in their world. And flying rainbow lasagna is when you are 100% in self-responsibility and in self-creation and in generating the events of your life. So if a person is in determinism, they're like, I'm eating food. I don't like this food. Somebody blame the chef. He did a bad job. And also I have no responsibility, and also I have no soul. I just sit here and complain. But when you are in self-actualization and you eat bad food, you're like, the chef did burn this food, but you know what? My mind contributed to the reality structure where the chef made bad food. I imagined and upheld and manifested into being an inadequate chef and inadequate ingredients and an inadequate fine dining experience. And if I want to have a better experience, I got to do something about it. It's actually not the chef's fault or the farmer's fault or the restaurateur's fault or the waiter's fault. I'm the one that has to do something different about it. And what you do different about it is to apply your consciousness, to apply your free will. And that is also at the basis of what it is to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. And when you do that, when that is your response to bad food in the restaurant of life, your soul grows. Look at the world right now. And if you're like, I don't like my government, I don't like the food supply, I don't like and I'm severely mistrustful of the pharmaceutical industry. There's a whole list of things that we can name that we don't like or enjoy or are malformed or poorly structured. We have souls. We who are in this class and we who are part of this group in this discussion, we have souls. And we're like, my mind is contributing to that reality. Not the 100% contributor, but I'm creating that with my mind, and so are others. I need to think differently. And that guy needs to think differently. And if we can think differently as a group and as individuals, we can change what is here. And that is the elevation of the soul collective. And that is ascension in this moment. You have to have enough people in the world who reclaim their divinity, think the thought, I am God, go into levels of responsibility and connectedness, as opposed to evading, rejecting responsibility and disconnecting and going into depression and blame of someone else. And when you become God, like, what is the journey like? Like, you don't fall over. You're like, that's it, guys, I'm God. Yeah, kaput. And then you fall over. No, of course not. Like, you remember and reclaim that you are God, and you move forward in that knowing. So I told you, like, some of these mystics is a good word. Mystics, saints, people who have reached these levels of attainment, they still live. You'll still be alive, but you'll live in a state of total pure poetry, where literally every single thing that you do is just pure artistry, and everything that you say is pure poetry, and everything that you do every day is an expression of divine perfection. And, when you think about any kind of a job that's like a bureaucracy or something where you're always, doing these same patterns without a lot of self-engagement, you're not expressing the truth of divine intelligence. It's just running on the hamster wheel. It's just passing time. It's just staying in the same patterns. And that's actually not life affirming to do that. You think like, oh, well, like 20 years have passed and I bought groceries and I'm continue to be alive and that's good. It's like, it's actually not that good. Like, just being a placeholder life is not that good. So the peripheral lives are lives of non-self-actualization, lives where you give up and feel that you are just in a strictly deterministic reality, lives where you are not in control of your path and generating results or possibilities for your future that you can inhabit. And just like Bill Murray in that movie, sometimes he gave up. Sometimes you'll be going through some of these parallel realities. I talked about having a threadbare soul where you're like this, like, I've done this so many times, I'm so bored, I'm done, and that's it. And I don't want you to feel that way, but I recognize that many of you have been through many, many repetitive cycles, and it can lead you to a sense of existential ennui or being at a gas and maybe having lost your uh, joy and exuberance. And of course, I'm very new, and so I'm happy to be like, I'll give you some exuberance. Like, let's lasagna together. But I want you to know, like, that's not what this world was supposed to be like. And you were supposed to maintain your joy and your exuberance the whole entire time. And you've been very much blocked in your journey by these boulders. And who and what are these boulders? Let's get to them. The pooties. They have been actively inhibiting ascension, and now the Putis have pretty much created technology and influenced technocrats in our world to further create these technological inhibitors to our ascension. But ascension is inevitable, and it's going to happen for you no matter what. But you can't say it's inevitable that it's going to happen for everybody here no matter what. That would be like saying everybody here at the arcade is going to definitely have an infinite supply of quarters and as much time as they need to be able to master Ms. Pac-Man or Frogger and be able to get to the highest level of their video game and get their name up on the high-ranking score of Masters of the Ages. And that's inevitable, as opposed to the concept that in the arcade, some people are doing a good job and they're working hard and they're learning about how to advance through these different levels. And some people are just wasting time, wasting money, not really evolving that much, taking as long as they possibly can, or slowing others down. And then at a certain point, the arcade closes. It's very, very highly presumptive to say that you think that the arcade is going to stay open just for you. I would even say narcissistic, that a lot of these sweat hogs, the unrecalcitrant bad students that are doing their math bad, they're like, hey, what do I care? It's got plenty of time. It's an infinite universe. Infinite universe. I can take as many times as I want to. And that's actually not true. It's actually not true. So now let's get to and I'll get to your questions and comments too. The concept of, could Hitler be an ascended master? Because we used to use Hitler as like a generic madman. I know he's always going through historical reassessments, but just let's use him as his traditional persona in our culture. Is like, he is remembered as the 20th century's like the most famous madman. You know, there's Hitler, there's Stalin, there's whatever, Charles Manson, but he's like a killer. He kills a lot of people. He was a bad person. Okay. So let's just think about him in those terms, that the Hitler that we know killing a lot of people would be a Hitler askew like this, that this guy really had opportunities in his earlier life to be an artist and to go to art school. And he submitted his portfolio, but he was rejected. They were like, you're not good enough to go to art school. And he was like, okay, that's fine. I'll just become one of history's greatest madmen and destroy a lot of lives. I'm being very, very silly and facetious about, the horrific chapter of human history. So I know I'm so inappropriate, but I hope it makes it go down easier to be able to talk about it in this way. What if he made a different choice? What if he made a different choice instead of being like, oh, art school rejected me. Oh, well, time for me to go ethnically cleanse Eastern Europe and cause a world war and destabilize the economy of Germany. No. What if he made a different choice? What if he was like, well, maybe I'll apply to a different school or apply again next year or do anything other than what he did? And of course, my telling is very facetious and rather two-dimensional. Like, it's not a very multi-dimensional complex telling of who this person was as Hitler, but he had options of who he could have been in his life other than becoming what we consider a bloodthirsty killer. Charles Manson's another good example, and maybe a little bit more down to earth because Hitler killed so many people and he's so big. He's like this big giant name. But Charles Manson, and he probably was, Charles Manson probably was some kind of an MK Ultra mind controlled slave, like, hugely distorted and influenced by handlers and other things like that. I don't think he was just like a homegrown one-off serial killer at all. And I don't even think that homegrown one-off serial killers exist. I think they are mostly manufactured by the alphabet agencies to create these agendas. So just please know that also, if you ever are in fear about where these killers and psychopaths come from, I think that they actually are manufactured by the intelligence agencies who are supposed to protect you from psychopaths. I think the intelligence agencies are actually inhabited and populated by 100% psychopaths, and that they then create psychopaths that they can then say, you need us to protect you from the psychopaths. But I know I diverge a little bit. But Charles Manson, similarly, in his earlier years, had a great interest in artistry and music. And on a different timeline, instead of becoming a drug-fueled psychopathic maniac, killed a bunch of people, he just became a musician. And whatever, was in a band, and maybe released some songs that eventually became the jingle to a sugary cereal in the morning. And he became an old dude who lived off of the music royalties. And you would kind of see him on the beach, whatever, wearing a silly little beach hat or whatever. Be like, oh, yeah, that's that guy. He wrote that song in 1962. It's part of the breakfast commercial. It goes like this. They made a jingle out of it. They're like, oh, that's that guy. Okay, great. And then that would be his life. That would be, of course, here's him as a psychopath. That would be him as like a writer who wrote some breakfast jingles and, did become an insane maniac. I'm doing such a bad, I feel like I'm totally mangling this, but I'm trying to say that some people have no hope. Those are the guys that got emanated not on a bridge of love to Tiamat and came from Mars. And they literally, there's nothing to refine there. They are the epitome of doo-doos. Doesn't matter if you put doo-doo in the refinery, you're not going to get light out of it. There is nothing good there. But those of us who are here in this world are mostly an amalgamation of proportions of both divinity and purity, light, goodness, and the true innate characteristics that come from this planet, and invader characteristics. And the invader characteristics have to do with, I've said the word psychopathology enough, but we can also call out fear and non-righteous violence. So violence is actually an innate part of your divine being. It's important for you to know that, because the stories of who ascended masters are and the stories of like Jesus Christ as an ascended master, they all kind of show you someone who's very like low muscle tone and floaty and kind of just like, I would never hurt anyone else and I'd rather be hurt myself than hurt someone else. But that is actually a satanic inversion of what masters are. Masters are, I want to say, good asses, not bad asses, but they are very strict and have strict boundaries and are very severe and can absolutely set boundaries, be violent, and mete out punishment, or use violence in a sacred way. Righteous violence is when you use it to prevent pathogenic death, prevent you from being killed or diseased, protect the innocent, protect those who are incapacitated, protect those who are too young to protect themselves. And those are pretty much the values of the cosmic Christ. The cosmic Christ is a non-neutral figure. Cosmic Christ does not stand by looking at you like, oh, like I see you're being raped and tortured and your skin is being flayed off of your body while you're still alive. Terrible luck for you. I'll just stand here and do nothing. No, Cosmic Christ is like, this is erroneous and wrong and should not happen. I intervene immediately. And this is also why myself, I am characteristic aligned with Cosmic Christ, or emanating from Cosmic Christ. I'm looking at humanity and looking at stuff on this planet, and I'm like, that is a bunch of effed up BS. I am going to do something about it. Flying Rainbow Lasagna is what I did. So I live and embody this truth of cosmic law enforcement. So Cosmic Christ is very much about being an interventionist when cosmic law is broken, or when it is not fully fairly expressed, when there's cosmic injustice. Cosmic Christ is engaged. not just to be like a busybody, like, oh, I think I'll insert myself into everybody else's business, but in the recognition that all of our consciousnesses are tied together, all of our lives are intimately tied together, all of our ascensions are intimately tied together, and that we owe a loyalty is the best word I can come up with in this moment. Not a debt, but a loyalty to others. If you were incapacitated, you would want someone else to protect you until you could sober up and protect yourself. If you were young, you would want someone to be an adult who would protect you until you could come into adulthood. And if you were, not able to grow and evolve, you would want someone else to be a umbrella, shielding, and protection around you so that you could learn about yourself, grow and evolve, and become the person that you are supposed to be. Just checking on Chiki, she's fine. Christopher, thank you for being here, says, I am glad you said that about bureaucracies. You just given me so much clarity on this. Thank you. You're so very welcome. And Charlie B says, bureaucracies and zombies are very similar. So true. He goes on to say they might even be the same species. I don't want to live alongside zombies. I do not either. And this also, I hope it is characterized as being much different than just like a personal preference. So you can tell from my personality structure, I am a very creative artist and I'm very much into innovation and I'm very much into doing things new and not being stuck in the same cycles. But that doesn't mean I don't have structure in my life. I actually adore structure. I love structure. So that means that, every day I wake up and I do pretty much the same thing. Like I get up and I turn on my music equipment and I either turn on music I've already made or I start making music and, I make some food and some coffee. And then making music is a central part of my day. But then, maybe I'm going to walk with my dog. We don't always do it at the same time, but I'll come home after the dog walk and I will make music. And same thing with making my artwork, which is what I'm pointing at over in my studio area there. Like I will always make time every day, if my schedule allows it, to be able to make my artwork. And then I'll always take time to do my dance and to take care of my body. And then, of course, I'm always going to do like chores around the house, cleaning up the dishes and doing the laundry. And that's usually at the end of the day. So my day isn't always exactly the same, but it always contains these same elements, these same basic elements and puzzle pieces that I've put together in a positive way. But I don't always make the same music and I don't always paint the same imagery and I don't always talk about the same thing in sessions or in lectures. So there are always going to be these wonderful innovations. In my dance, I always do my flying rainbow lasagna dance, but that doesn't mean that the dance is the same every day. Like some days the dance will be shaped in one way, and then some days the dance will be a completely different shape. So that's the innovation. Like, yes, I'm always going to dance, but I'm always going to dance in a new and different way. That's very, very different than the life of a bureaucrat, which is always like, you must wake up at this time, you must take this bus to get to your job, then you must go to your desk, then you must sit at your desk, and then you will make your cup of coffee, and then you will do these tasks, that you have to do, and then you will have your lunchtime at the same time. Like that regularity of time, that scheduling is not a natural behavior of time. Like those events, time is used to fluidity and innovations and ways of doing things that are not rigid. And these bureaucracies are the definition of rigidity in terms of scheduling. And then there is also the yearly cycle where it's like, if you work for the IRS, like April 15th is tax day and everybody files their paperwork. And then you're going to do this all year long. And then at the end, you send out this paperwork and then you send out this paperwork and then you start it all over again, like time cycles. Public school teachers are also very much zombified by these time cycles because it's always like, September, it's a new school year, time to do orientation. Then it's time to do Halloween decorations. Then it's time to do Thanksgiving decorations. Then it's time to do Christmas decorations. Then it's time to do Valentine's Day decorations. Then it's time for Groundhog's Day decorations. Sorry, I mixed that one up. Then it's time for Mother's Day. Then it's time for Father's Day. Then the school year is over and everyone has summer break. Like, You can have a whole 20-year-long career as a public school teacher with the same curriculum and the same holidays and even the same arc of consciousness, like, trajectory. Like at first, like, whatever you're teaching French, and all the kids are like, we can't speak French at all. And then by Valentine's Day, like we've learned to conjugate verbs. And then by June, we can all read a short article in French, like every year is pretty much the same, and the students do the same thing every year. And if you've been in my class for a long time, I'm always running the same curriculum, but I don't make it the same. People are new in the class and are always having new insights, and we're always going to talk about things in a new way, including like my reference to the amalgamation of true characteristics versus untrue characteristics as it relates to bureaucracies. And let's just call it going into an automated mind state. Because sometimes it's people working in retail. Like if you work in a grocery store and you're checking out groceries for people where they pay at the end of their journey. And like you can just be totally on autopilot. People say the same things. People are in a routine. And I always try to get people out of their routine and to be like, have a real connection, have a real interaction, and not just say like, hello, how was your day? My day is fine. How was your day? Like all of those things, like it's predictable. You might as well be a machine. And Christopher is saying no, they need to go to entropy, and I'm completely agreeing. So now let me speak like in a very serious way. We are moving into a new chapter of experience. And that is really what Ascension is. There is something on the other side of Ascension. It's not just like you have the I am God moment, like I am God, and then no, it's like you keep going through life knowing that you are God. We who are recognizing and aligning with and claiming our divinity, we are moving into a new chapter. And that chapter is synonymous with like total self-responsibility. Literally, if you experience something or have bad food, you can't blame the chef. You have to take responsibility. You have to be like, what was my contribution to this negative life experience? That's in a pristine system. So we must clear out the consciousnesses and the people who are not taking responsibility in order for us to be in that level of experience. And that's everyone in the world who's just like the dead weight, dross, whatever you'd call it, like the dried out, empty husks of people who aren't real people anymore, and they just kind of go along to get along, but also the people who are negative zombies who want to zombify you and prevent you from being on your ascension path. That really, there's not a place for that level of degraded consciousness in the new chapter of what we are experiencing. Think about it like this, like if you're going to go on a foot race, but it's one of these wilderness foot treks, and you have to have kind of like a compass and be able to read your compass, and you also have to know where the sun is, and then you also have to be smart enough to be like, avoid the bears, don't get caught in a thicket of cactuses with big giant long needles on them. Like you have to like use your brain in order just to be able to run. Like you have to be a super athlete to run, but then also to be able to see where is the path and know where you're going and all these things. It involves a huge amount of self-actualization. This is very, very different than, let's say, if you're running around an oval in a gym and like all you have to do is just run around in a circle 7 times, and then that's the race. That is a very, very different level of reality. So we are moving into this wild foot trek where a lot of these personalities and personality characteristics are just totally not prepared. And they're going to get sunk or like kind of destroyed by the cosmic time tsunami as this enormous influx of light and divine potential and time flows into reality. Some people are going to be like, hooray, anything is possible. I'm prepared for this. And they're like swimming and running valiantly and making all sorts of cool things happen. And some people are like, I am totally unprepared for this. Like, I do not know what to do. I don't know how to deal with any level of unpredictability, innovation, or self-responsibility. And they're just going to poop out because they don't know what to do. Like, that's literally the world that you're in right now. even in terms of finances. Like, it's not enough simply to work at your job or work at your bureaucratic position or your sinecure, receive your paycheck, pay for your mortgage, pay for your car payment, put small amounts of money aside, and then hope that you will receive your pension at the end of your employment. And then you will live in your retirement until you develop diseases and fall over and die. You cannot live that life anymore. That world does not exist. You can't do that. If you do that, you will like tank. You will not be successful. You will not finish the race. You will not be able to move forward and do what you need to do, because you're in a time right now when the entire money system is going to be redefined. So you can't just be like, well, I'll just get a job, stay at that job for the rest of my life and earn small amounts of money. Then you will be poor, possibly starve if you do that. You have to be like, wow, I have to read a bunch of articles, learn about what is happening in the world, use my intuition, make good choices based upon my own motivation. I might have to start a business. I might have to do something that's completely different than what other people are doing in my neighborhood. I might have to go against the tides in order to stay alive. I might need to do all sorts of different things in order to prepare for the future. Like, that is how you stay alive. So that would look like diversifying, like I said, starting a business, being in community, creating permaculture, all these different types of things. Like, you cannot live in the zombified way that industrialized culture has created zombies. Humans did not start out as zombies. And even in, like, let's say, the 1700s or a time before electricity, people were actually not zombies, and people were much more engaged with life and much more self-responsible. And the technology has definitely been not only a soporific and something that puts you to sleep, but also something that is a removal of willpower. And I talked to you many times about the GPS. Like, I can certainly remember what it was like in the early 2000s when I first came here as Aurora, that if I needed to know where to go and how to get someplace, like, I did have to learn, like, how to write down directions. I did not know how to get places. And then I would follow the directions to get to where I needed to go. And then I remember when GPS was invented, and there's this lady's voice, and she tells you, like, turn left here, turn right here, drive 100 meters, and then blah, blah. And I remember being like, oh, like, yeah, you just turn off your brain and you just follow the directions. Like, that is the death of soul. That is how you die and become a zombie. And that was all the way back then. And now we have so many things that are technological promptings that tell people to do stuff. And all of it becomes automated, and it makes you an automaton. So, in every way possible, try to retain your true humanity and your true innovation. And to flying rainbow lasagna is to move in unexpected patterns at all times and always do something new. So you can practice doing things by being like, don't do the same thing every morning. Don't always walk the same path. Don't always, wear the same outfit. Don't always get coffee at the same place. Like, shake it up a little bit, but also shake it up on a deeper level. Poke all the sacred cows, think all the forbidden thoughts. One of the greatest forbidden thoughts in my life was when I was living in San Diego, and I was under so much duress and so much demonic attack, and I really did not like my living situation. And just one thought was this: what if I moved back to Ojai? That thought opened all of these doors that brought me back into my positively aligned, perfect timeline of where I'm supposed to be. So I'm going to wrap it up soon. I'll get to all of your questions, but I want you to know each of your lives is completely unique. None of it is a one size fits all. It must be customized. So you must figure out what is right for you. Another person might be perfectly happy living in San Diego, but for me, that place was hell. That was not the right pathway for me. And I had to get myself back onto the right pathway. And you know what had sent me onto the wrong pathway? This stuff speaking into my mind and trying to change and inhibit my DNA from dancing in positive directions into very, very degraded directions. And what this technology stuff also did was it took like, I make wishes all the time where I'm like, oh, I wish for this. I wish for this. I did at one point wish to move to San Diego because there's like good things happening there. And I would be able to, whatever, be a part of a music school that is there and other fun things. But that was not what happened. It's like taking the wish that is to do something that's positive and on your life path and diluting it until it's just running on the hamster wheel. And that was what that experience was. And that's what that experience was for the world. And we are just now reclaiming so much of the energy that was lost in the Ascension moment in 2019. It's not gone for good. So don't go into despair or don't give up. But please know you have lost a lot, but that where there's life, there's hope. You can get back onto your path and you can get back into those moments of remembering that you're God and then manifesting a beautiful place. Like when you remember that you're good, like, I am God, you're like, this place sucks. I'm making it better. That's what I want you to do. Okay, so wait, now back to questions over here. Pedro says DNA has so much information. I think that's the book of life. Exactly. It is the book of life, and it's meant to be indelible and something that can't be screwed up and something that can't be like you take one chapter, like you take the whole thing. That's it. You can't just take a little slice. And there's very real reason why you have everything that you have inside of you. None of it is quote unquote junk DNA. All of this is meaningful, but humanity has not ascribed meaning to or decoded a lot of what you're experiencing. And Christopher says, yes, I strive to have positive thoughts of unconditional love moment by moment. That is wonderful. And that is one of the most effective things you can do in terms of moving from a slanted angle going towards death, going towards eternal life. So here, in to speak in positives, the ways that you can become empowered in your life. First of all, is to think the thought, I create my life. Do not go into determinism. Do not say, oh, some man with a long white beard makes my life, and he's the chef, and he's got a lot to answer for because this restaurant is not good. You have to be like, I create my life. And also you're allowed to say, I create a proportion of my life, maybe not 100% of it. You're also allowed to say, I am in the process of learning how to be empowered in creating my life. Because you can recognize that you've been creating your life, but you've been out of control. It's like maybe you've been cooking the food that you eat in the restaurant, but you have not been controlling what is the temperature of the oven, or how long are the eggs cooking on the pan. That's why the food was tasting bad. You weren't 100% in control of it. So you start to recognize with thought structures and say, I am powerful. I am the creator of my life. Then you start to claim the empowerment and be like, oh, I need to be in charge of how this oven is and how these eggs are and how this guy is doing this and how this guy's doing it. You have to start to claim empowerment in the situation. It would be terrible if you were like, oh, I'm just the creator. Like I just big banged this place into existence and now the whole place is a complete crap show. And I just sit around here experiencing crap. Like that would be hell. You don't want that. You want to be like, I big banged this place into existence. I continually big bang this place into existence through my observership. And I have to keep on refining my vision so that it gets better and better. And that is the essence of what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. Every time you do your dance, you hop out of reality, do an abstract dance, recalibrate reality, move it in a better direction, and then jump back into reality. You're like, okay, it's like taste the soup. Like, does it taste better now? And you keep going and you keep on doing that. Unconditional love is another very, very powerful tool for being able to transform reality. And unconditional love is not necessarily warm, cozy, mammalian affection. Sometimes unconditional love is the acceptance of pathogenesis. And to be like, you know something, that thing is diseased. It is what it is. It ain't going to get better. Sometimes people who are innately healers inside really face a brick wall on this because they want to fix people and they want to heal people. And some situations and people and conditions can be fixed and healed, but sometimes they cannot. And it is unloving if you're like, oh, I require for you, and you to be healed, and then I'll be okay. Because sometimes that's not in the cards for them. Sometimes people are at the arcade and they're not going to play the video game of Ascension. Like it would be very presumptuous to think that Adolf Hitler and Charles Manson and a lot of other psychopathic people are going to get another try, another go round. In fact, I remember when I was driving home from Sedona last year, and I was going through a particular canyon, and I had a very, very good like moment of connection to nature and insight, and all of these pathogenic things were trying to say to me in that moment. They were like, "Let's negotiate, kid. Like, okay, like clearly our backs are against the wall, and you're destroying all this pathogenic stuff, and we can't just lead our crappy lives anymore. Give us another chance. Give us a remedial classroom. We want to learn and grow." And I said to them flat out, no, because you know what? I'm like, this is the remedial classroom. This life is literally where we are here to work out this stuff, and there's not more options. I know that there's work like Ashayana Dean and other teachers who talk about a fallen world and like you have fallen this far, but you're just on a plateau. You can always bounce further down, incrementally further down, incrementally further down. I am like, no, actually, there is nothing lower than this. And you don't get to have another chance where you're like, well, oops, oopsie, I screwed it up so much and I'm such an unrecalcitrant soul, but just give me another remedial reality pocket world. And I'll go in there and I'll try to be a better person. And I'm just being very vapid and empty inside and pretending that I'm going to be all better. And you have to be smarter than that, because you are creating the recipe of reality. So you have to be like, no, actually, I do not agree to that. All the time, living in unconditional love is powerful, but also saying no, thank you is an aspect of unconditional love. Setting boundaries. I told you guys I've been a nanny many times, and I learned setting boundaries is a sign of love, especially like if kids are like, I want to eat chocolate right before bedtime. Be like, no, setting boundaries is a sign of love. You know why? Because this kid's going to get caffeinated and he's never going to go to sleep. That's it. Like sometimes you have to be the smarter person, the more responsible person, and to set a boundary and to say, no, I do not agree to this. The pathogenic presences are largely irresponsible and self-serving, and they would eat chocolate candies before going to bed, and then they would drive you up a wall all night long easily. Pedro says, are there other members of the band here in the physical world, Earth or other worlds, or from other bands? Yes, there are very many bands. So there's many different neural impulses that are on the network of God, divine consciousness. I am Aurora. I am one of them, but not the only one. There are many different places that exist that are like Atlantis. But then this bad stuff, it's been like a monster going around, chomping on worlds. And I think that a lot of those worlds have been chomped. In the past 4 years, it's been almost impossible for me to telepathically connect with those worlds and with ancient Atlantis and with my Aurora Collective, because you are in right now like a frequency imprisonment zone where it's almost impossible to be able to have psychic freedom. So I can't say what their current status is. But yeah, for a very long time, those guys are there, and they're having a parallel experience, but they are also not perfect people. They're not in a position to rescue you. Just like this, just like if you guys are having trouble with your money, I'm not in a position to rescue you. I wish I were. Like, I truly wish that I had all of the financial resources at the level of Elon Musk, and then I'd be like, oh, like you need a new hot water heater, like here you go, like here's whatever, $300, buy it. Like those problems are so easily solved. But right now, I'm not a billionaire, so I'm not at the level of being able to just hand out money to be able to solve people's problems. So that's what you have to know. Like there can be really loving and benevolent presences or cultures, but they might not be resourced in the way to be able to give you the resources that you need in order to move forward or survive or have a better life. So you can't always expect just because someone is good that they'll have what you need and be able to give it to you. So there's a difference. The disconnect of a neutral person that's like, oh, I see you're being raped and horribly tortured. I'll do nothing to help you. That is different. Like, I would definitely do anything if you were being raped and tortured. I would sally forth. I would come on in with my sword and whatever weapons I could find, and I would behead the people who were trying to hurt you. Believe me, I would do that. But if you needed a new hot water heater, I would be like, you will have to like get $300 from someone else because I don't have that for you. So please know that we have a lot of solidarity. We have a lot of parallel suffering in the things that they're facing in their world, but they're not necessarily set up to be able to give the resources to us that we need, or that we have it to give to them. But we are definitely here to help one another in the ways that we can. And sometimes that can be through energetic support, social support, emotional support, and new ideas and ways of doing things. That can be important too. Pedro says, could you give an FRL message? You could start a FRL massage. If he wants to know if I do FRL massage, you could start a franchise. I would not want to touch people's bodies. I am so sorry to say that most people's bodies are so poorly calibrated and so much not in a good way that for me to touch other people's bodies or even being near their energy fields is actually really draining to me. So that would not be an ideal profession for me at all. I hug friends and community members, but I actually feel like very, very uncomfortable about touching people's bodies. And when I do my crystal energy work and healings and personal sessions, I am like sending energy and beaming frequency through people's bodies. That is also like, I work with, select people, but that's also a level of intimacy and touching people's bodies. That is like a lot. That's a lot for me to do. I only want to touch selective bodies here in this world and would not want to touch very many bodies. Tom Flynn says, are the last few minutes of an FRL dance exponentially more important than what preceded? It's a great question. He says, i.e., keep pushing despite tiredness. Or are the last few minutes more like adding the final touches on your painting, the small details? That's a great question. Every lasagna dance is different, but I have noticed that my lasagna dance usually have an arc where initially I start out and I'm trying to get into the mood. I'm like trying to get some elevation. I'm trying to get some momentum. And usually the most critical things happen for me at the peak like of the bell curve in the midst of the lasagna. And then usually the energy trails out from there where I achieve what I need to achieve at the mountain peak. And that is the most important stuff. And then after that, it's cherries on top of cherries and sprinkles on top and around the edges and things like that. But it's important to have that kind of like deceleration and gentle reinsertion back into reality. But I would say sometimes if I only have like 5 seconds for lasagna, because I have done a 5-second lasagna, that can be enough. Like it is it is not about how much time you spend in your activity of lasagna. It is about how much energy. So think about it like this. Like I could spend 8 hours on a Sunday cleaning up my house. And I would, clean all the surfaces and wash everything and do all the laundry and do all the everything. But I could do all of that in 1 hour or even in half an hour. But that would be a level of incredibly intense, high energy activity. Like you would see me like moving all around the house, super, 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 super fast, in and out of the laundry, in and out of the laundry, and then boom, we're done in half an hour. So it's not about the time that is spent. It is about the number of plates that you can keep spinning or the intensity of activity that you can achieve in that time. So sometimes in the dance, I'm able to achieve a lot in the first few moments of the dance. And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. That's done. Everything else is just cherries on top. And sometimes I'm going and I'm like, I'm not there yet. I did not do what I needed to do yet. I didn't feel that oomph. I didn't get to that moment yet. And then I have to keep going. So it reminds me very much of birth, even though I have not given physical birth. People have shared with me about their experiences as being a mom, and I watched some videos and things like that. It feels more like that. Like the goal is always like to get the baby out and to give birth, but sometimes it's like a 12-hour long, very laborious process. And sometimes it's like just, like 45 minutes and then boom, like that baby is here. So it's different every time. And that's the energetic weather report. Sometimes it is beautiful, smooth sailing, and it's like, boom, the baby is here. We did it. And then sometimes it is stormy, not ideal, under huge duress, really, really, really difficult. And it's an effort to get even a small amount done. And all of this is part of the lasagna of your life. So it's not always going to be a horrible, stormy day. But sometimes it's a stormy, rough seas. Sometimes it's a wet campfire, like you can't get that flame started. It's just wet campfire. And sometimes it's a beautiful sunny day. And sometimes you feel like your lasagna turns on immediately. And it also sometimes feels like you could dance forever. And on those days, like sometimes I have done like 3 hours of consecutive lasagna, and I was able to sustain everything that I needed to do. Those are usually like in the summertime when I have like my bikini on and I have the lots of sunlight and great nutrition, meaning like, lots of fresh fruits and just beautiful health and vitality. And then there are sometimes like if it's raining, wintertime, and also if I had to do a lot of like crappy activities like whatever, administrate my website, blah, 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 wholesale orders, putting together all of these things and, all of this type of computer stuff. And then be like, okay, now dance lasagna like that. I have very little energy for dancing lasagna under those circumstances. Or if I were like being held as a prisoner of war, being starved and violated, and my mind assaulted at all times, of course, that would be totally non-ideal state of lasagna. And I have danced the most that I could. If you're ever under horrible imprisonment circumstances, do the best you can. That's it. And sometimes just staying alive is enough. But sometimes even if you can do just like a brief flash of lasagna, that's enough to kind of get, like if you're in a straitjacket, get the wiggle room so that you can get yourself out of the straitjacket. So let's say maybe you're not being held captive by, whatever evil government agents and people that do this type of stuff, but maybe you're just super depressed or whatever is going on. If you can just lasagna, even if it's for a minute, you can shift your reality structure so that you have like a little bit of fresh air, a little bit of breathing space, and then you take that energy and you snowball it into greater levels of capacitation. Any one of us can get to feeling very depleted. So don't think that it's never going to happen to you. Even an ascended master can be very drained and brought down to a non-ideal state, but you can always recover from that and like I say, snowball yourself back up into greater levels of metabolism, having more energy and more resources and moving fast. Think about it like money. Like even some super financial wizard or very, very well-connected person can lose their investment and go down to zero. And if they go down to zero, then what are they going to do? They're going to have to start out with everything from the beginning again and try to build their company and try to build their finances. So you can be an ascended master and you can be drained or disadvantaged. And so you can't just be like, okay, I'm an ascended master. Like, I don't work now. I'm retired. I don't have to do anything now. You still have to protect yourself. You still have to plant seeds for the future. You still have to do stuff. And if you ever had a huge attack as an ascended master, you would be able to recover. This is the story of Atlantis. Atlantis is like an ascended master culture that got very drained, very depleted, very pooped upon. And we are not dead and we are not gone, but we have to get our energy back and get revitalized. So the resources went down to almost zero. We need some kind of a grant or a loan or a generation resources to be able to even generate more resources. And that's kind of what lasagna is. Pedro says, love the lasagna, love the teacher, love the teachings. You're so kind. Thank you so much. Thank you for the positivity and for being a long-term student. So I'm going to wrap class up because I'm going to take Cheeky out for a little bit of exercise. The class notes are, of course, a part of the email, and you can find them in the PDF. And I think it's worth it to always watch the recorded whiteboards. So for people who are formally engaged students and formally enrolled students, do your homework, watch the whiteboards, and then you'll know what I'm talking about on all of this. And I love the description about the rainbow journey. It is very, very apt and is like very pristine and very pure. And then my final thing is, I know it's always at the end of like 3 hours that I give important announcements. I should have done this first, but still encouraging people to sign up for the retreat that will be at Flying Rainbow Lasagna Dance Retreat here in Ojai in May. I have, I think, at least 2 more accommodations open. So I still think that 2 more people can sign up. All right, possibly 3. So please, if you're interested, reach out and can talk to me about putting down a deposit or a payment plan or whatever you need to secure your space. Okay, very excited about that because when we dance together, it absolutely amplifies, energizes, and does so many fun and exciting things. Even more, like I'm telling you, when you play with other musicians, even more than when you are just playing in your own garage or here in your own studio. And the things that you come up with are even more and more fun and exciting. Okay. And for anyone who wants to be a part of that retreat, and if you're not already, you should dance with me on my Tuesday morning class. There's no fee to be a part of it, but you just reach out and I'll put you on the list. And that way you can kind of start to cultivate your body and also learn about what I'm talking about when I tell you my shorthand of like how you should move through time, like time tsunamis and other things like that. Like you have things to learn so that way you can dance safely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you and gratitude to everyone who's in this class, both the people who are here when I do the actual lectures and the people who find this afterwards. Thank you so much.